Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery and those watching online. Welcome to our council meeting. The City of Swan disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on a statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until a written notice of either an approval, conditions which relate to it, or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the Council's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in a meeting during public question time and public statement time, it is assumed that your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured. Conditions of entry: no electronic, visual or audio recording or transmitting device or instrument is permitted to be used. A person who breaches the provision of the City of Swan Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 will be required to immediately leave the premises. Attendance and apologies. I have nil, although I do know that Councillor Podolnik is running late. Are there any others, Mr CEO?
Mr Mayor, there's no other apologies.
Declarations of financial and proximity interest and interest affecting impartiality. They are as of the agenda forum last week. There are no changes or any other declarations, councillors or staff. Public question time. Questions and answers are recorded in the minutes of the meeting, may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. Question and answers marked with an asterisk have been amended, either for the purpose of summarising, e.g. removing preamble or statements, or editing. 5.1 answers to questions which were taken on notice. We have questions from Mr Aaron Bowman and Sarah Howlett, which are the answers are included in the agenda. Questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. Questions for which due notice has been given. I have nil. Questions without notice. I have a question from Ms Diane Arvino, which has been answered. And I have a question from Mr Aaron Bowman. If Mr Bowman's in the gallery, you just come to the podium and turn the microphone on. Thank you, Mr Bowman.
Mr Mayor, to provide a better service for the same price is what all staff and elected members should be trying to achieve each and every day for the City of Swan residents and ratepayers. I congratulate the waste staff for doing this with the on-demand bulk waste collection service for residents. I note the agenda forum notes that Councillor Congleton has an alternative motion, and unless I'm looking in the wrong spot, we the residents and ratepayers do not get to see what this is unless we come to the council meeting tonight. My question is, do the councillors remember how bad it was previously with the old system when waste was always blowing down our street, scavengers rummaging through your pile and everyone else's pile, out of suburb nighttime dumpers and little to no ability for any real recycling?
Well, I think that the council's up, but I would say yes.
My next question, Mr Mayor, anyone living in Ellenbrook, Averley or the surrounding suburbs would tell you that one of the most important projects to get underway is the much talked about and promised Ellenbrook Pool. I noticed that the City of Swan is advertising for a senior project manager, Ellenbrook Leisure Centre. The job advert advised it will be ongoing until project completion, which is anticipated May 2023. It's paying 96 to 107,000 Ks, closes at 11:45 p.m. on Wednesday the 19th of May for anyone that's interested. The advert advises that the Ellenbrook Leisure Centre will be both for aquatic and dry facilities and it's be over $50 million. Can you advise if all funding is in place, or is this project still contingent on the City obtaining grant funding not yet received or committed, as it would appear that this topic is for the Canberra lobbying trip?
No, we have exhausted state and federal funding, and there's, the council have money on the budget to complete the project.
Mr Mayor, I apologise if it seems to you and your staff that I may be the Jeff Parry of ratepayers asking the difficult questions, but to not answer my question from last month lacks accountability and transparency from the City. Mr Mayor, in reference to my fourth question from last month, where staff have now provided information that they knowingly allowed alcohol at an event to occur. At the same time, children from 4 local primary schools were at the same location. I ask my question again. Will Council urgently request the Administration to review its current operating policies to ensure this does never occur again?
I'll take your question on notice, Mr Bowman.
Mr Mayor, what new youth, and I'm talking 13 to 18-year-olds, initiatives and projects does the City have in place or are planning to put in place to address the lack of things to do in Allenbrook, Aveley and surrounding areas for this age group that some might say is resulting in the increased level of antisocial behaviour that we are now seeing?
Take your question on notice.
And my final question, Mr Mayor. It appears to me and many others that I speak to that the City of Swan Council is dysfunctional. It's wasting significant funds and staff resources on trivial items or on items that would not pass the pub test, and you are all not getting on with the job that you were elected for. Mr Mayor, I do not expect each and every one of you to like each other, but surely as elected members you can put your personalities and personal preferences aside to get on and do the job that the electors have elected you for. Some examples: the $65,000 spent on the Merrill dinner, the significant high number of notice and motions from councillors. My favourite for this month is whether councillors can have a toilet break or not. The many questions raised by councillors with or without notice during council meetings. Councillor Johnson's 21 from last month must be a new record. The number of revocation motions. The closure of a particular street is one that illustrates my point. Not adopting the new councillor member, committee member and candidate code of conduct by the legislative due date, which was the 3rd of May. Or perhaps the significant debate last month on a 6 square metre outbuilding. Mr Mayor, my question is, what has the council and councillors done to improve since we were all summoned by the Department of Local Government to a meeting regarding the concerns they have with the City of Swan councillor behaviour?
Question on notice. Thanks, Mr Bowman. Okay, if no one else to register asked a question on items on the agenda, is there any further items on questions from the gallery on items on the agenda? None? Oh, there is? You state your name, please.
So we just had a question. We've just seen that the Councillor McCulloch has, or putting forward to resolve that the matter is for 4.7 for the Grand Cafe is deferred for the consideration as matter a future ordinary meeting. So we're just wondering why.
Should probably suggest when Councillor McCulloch moves a motion, you'll get that reason.
And is there opportunity to ask questions at that point?
No, there won't be. Once we start the meeting proper, question time's finished.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, no other questions? Thank you. Questions 5.3, other questions for which due notice has been given. Must be an urgent one, Councillor Johnson. Better take it. I have questions from Mr Bob Baku, Mr Cole Jarvis, Teresa Bailey, Karen Mowat, Yvonne Baku and Naomi Jenkin. They have been answered. Also from Mrs Jacqueline Jones, Sarah Howlett, whose answers have been supplied. Is there anyone in the gallery wishing to ask any further questions of a general manner? None? Okay, going to move to public statement time. Registration for public statement time to council meeting is required by 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Each public statement is limited to 2 minutes and there will be no extensions. The maximum period set aside for public statement is 15 minutes. The first public statement is from Ms Francesca Owen, who she promises me is on matters of a general nature. Thank you, Ms Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Last week we presented a petition of 198 signatures regarding asking City of Swan to stop building roads on the Oval till a traffic assessment had been completed. Since then we've received 54 more, so I'm asking for these additional 54 to be added to the original, which makes a total of 254. If I could hand that in, thank you very much. My statement tonight is generally about feedback from Midland, or feedback from the community, from the City of Swan. I had two experiences today. I filled in the survey called Community Perception Survey 221 on your webpage. Fantastic. I was asked to score and enabled to comment on Council's handling of every aspect of its work. Great. I got to the last set of questions, which was about the MORM, but unfortunately there was only a score box option and the text box option had disappeared. So I couldn't tell you my feelings about the MORM. There may have been a good reason why you changed the questionnaire, but for the participant, it felt like you didn't want to hear from me. Then I flicked onto the draft Midland Local Area Plan on the Swan web page. It summarises the outcomes of the City of Swan's public consultation process regarding the top 10 priorities in the Midland local area. Interesting to see that the top two were: 1, promote and protect Midland's heritage; 2, ensure Midland has public open space that caters for the community. And then there's a further 8 dropping down below that. So there's some feedback you've received, I've received recently by looking at your webpage. Here's a bit more. There are 6 sitting councillors in front of me who made MORM review part of their election platform. Midland Guildford ward candidates who did not support the MORM review were not elected. Call for MORM review has been made by thousands of community petition signatures across all the wards, and topics of numerous council motions, annual electors and special electors meetings. So there's some feedback to you from across all the wards, because every ratepayer is affected, not just Midland. Watching the webcasts...
Thank you, Ms Irwin. That's your 2 minutes.
Just one last finishing.
No, that's your 2 minutes. Thank you, Ms Irwin. There are no extensions, councillors. Made it very clear. Next speaker on this... next speaker is Mr Patrick Irwin, also I believe speaking on matters of a general nature.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I've been here on this subject so long, so often, but Midland is our regional urban centre. It requires a major central park. This is what we need, what the community wants, what urban design requires, what common sense requires. What we do not need is to spend $200 million on destroying our greatest public asset of green central space in Midland. We have been told that the current MORM is defective by Dr. Lindley Lutton, who is a senior urban designer. We've been told by Jerry Hansen, the biggest builder in WA, that as a building project, apartments on the Oval are not viable. We have been told, you have been told by Howard Dawson of the Swan Valley Ratepayers, who is experienced in major project planning, that this business plan for the current MORM does not stack up. Please, councillors, we need to review this MORM, get a good design for a major central park, at least as big as the original Midland Oval, and we can stop sucking the oxygen out of this room, which has been going on for far too long, and get on with progressing Midland, which is an important part of the City of Swan.
Thank you, Mr Irwin.
Thank you.
Next statement is from Mr Don Robinson in regards to item 4.1, consideration of submissions for the amendment number 103, the local planning scheme number 17 to rezone 3 properties in Gidgegannup from general rural to special rural to facilitate smaller rural living opportunities. The Deputy Mayor has declared an interest, and we just asked him to leave the room. Thank you, Mr Robinson. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. On the 16th of February, Mayor Kevin Bailey said on the ABC morning radio program that a Tilden Park subdivision would never be allowed now by the City of Swan. I hope this is true. Make no mistake, this proposal would create another Tilden Park. 29 blocks on 67 hectares are proposed immediately. 350 blocks in total are proposed eventually. That would increase by 1/3 the population of the hotly contested North Stoneville development, which is just over the road, almost contiguous with this land. Major developments like these should be planned and coordinated, not done de facto, ad hoc and piecemeal. Eventually, this area can be considered for planned development in a way advantageous for all landowners and the wider community. The current application is a get-rich-quick scheme for a couple of landowners who bought to subdivide despite the zoning and all the policies at the time of purchase. Contrary to claims made by the applicants and their agent, my position and that of my neighbours has never changed. This has been clearly stated at every consultation over 30 years. We have always wanted the land to remain general rural. All the neighbours objecting to this scheme, who have lived on and farmed their land for many decades, know that this area of land has never been designated by the WAPC for the sort of subdivision sought now. That is why the city's own planners have always recommended that this isolated piecemeal rezoning should not be supported. Between 2006 and 2014, the land was designated for possible rezoning for lots down to 6 hectares average size. However, WAPC advised the City of Swan that this must change. That is why the City of Swan Council in 2014 twice deferred a decision. It was not rejected wrongly or without reason or whimsically, as Council was told in 2018. In truth, Council
Thank you, Mr Robinson. That's your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Please reject this proposal.
And next speaker is Ms Laurel Finnis-Dudek. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In regards to C3.2, the State Administrative Tribunal reconsider the refusal of proposed childcare facility on Norman Street, Bellevue.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes as well.
Okay. Good evening, CEO, Mayor and councillors. My name is Laurel Finnis-Dudek. I live opposite the proposed DA. I present 2 petitions totalling 35 signatures in relation to the proposed childcare premises, corner Norman and Blackburn Street in Bellevue. 11 people who made a previous submission on this matter wish it to be known that they still strongly object to this DA, and 24 people in Norman, Blackburn, Tennyson Streets also strongly object to this DA. We asked why the previous rejection was not the end of it. It didn't comply with policies guiding daycare centres. Why are the decision makers ignoring this? Can city staff make their own rules and support any DA they like regardless of policies? It is just to save money going back to SAT. Are we, the residents, the sacrificial lambs in having our residential amenity destroyed by a business on residential land whose service is not needed in Bellevue, as the new all-day Sonus childcare centre in the Sale Yards complex at Clayton Street, Bellevue, is soon opening 2.6 kilometres away, awaiting 86 children, bringing total vacancies within 5 kilometres of Norman Street to 303. In whose language is this not oversupply? Oh, of course, a developer's language, who, aided by SAT, is crippling the industry according to the professionals. Councillors, we residents, are not to be complicit in this as well. The unnecessary 300 traffic movements this will create is not acceptable and unfair to add to current commercial movements and future developments on general commercial land on Blackburn Street. Please, councillors, reject the application again and leave this land residential, as 48 traffic movements from 6 possible homes on this site is more compatible with residential than this DA. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Finnis-Dudek. Next statement is Mr Ben Porath from the South Guildford Community Association in regards to item 4.2, the proposed amendment 194 to local plan scheme in regards to Rose Hill. Thank you, Mr Ben Porath.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Representing the South Guildford Community Association, we are against the Rose Hill Water Structure Plan amendment to rezone part of the development for higher density. These reasons include noise levels, community well-being, parking infrastructure and facilities, traffic, property value, heritage and park protection. The developers were awarded the rights to develop Rose Hill Estates with a detailed proposal and conditions. We have already seen variations, omissions and now requested amendments to deviate from this initial accepted proposal for the purpose of financial gain for the developers and their Chinese investors. We are losing Padbury Stables. The community ball system, which was part of the environmental proposal, is not going ahead. Building attenuations to limit noise are not being adhered to. Due to costs, landscaping packages have been reduced, dry dead gardens, weeds, cars parked along the streets and verges due to unsuitable parking in small properties, and now the retirement village is being withdrawn to make the situation worse. What's next? The developers are looking for any opportunity or loophole to limit their obligations and to increase their profits at the expense of Rose Hill Estate, residents, Guildford community and Perth. They are even claiming that the site is now less affected by the airport noise corridor, which is not the case. The initial runway is not being discontinued or moved, and flights on this runway are actually planned to increase. We are passionate about Guildford retaining its semi-rural environment and history, large residential plots, diverse demographics including retirement village, and urge you to maintain Guildford for what it is, heritage, nature and a country feel. All we ask is that the developers are kept in line with their original proposal and held accountable for any deviations from this. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Ben Porath. That's all the statements I have registered. I now move to petitions. Now we have a petition of 189 signatures which was received at the Agenda Forum on the 5th of May, and I believe there's some extras been added to that,
So, Mr Mayor, we
which
have 54 signatures.
brings the total to 254, is it? 254. And there's a recommendation there that they be considered in line with C1.3, Councillor Kiley's motion on invoking the sunset clause. And in 7.2, I have two petitions containing a total of 35 signatures obtained in regards to the proposed daycare centre in Norman Street, Bellevue. And the petition submitter is Miss Laurel Finnis-Judak. You've got your petition there?
Yeah, we're passed.
Okay. Thank you. And obviously that will be considered when we get to item C 3.2. Any further petitions to be presented from any members of the public or councillors? No? There are no deputations. Announcements by the presiding. I'll need a mover and a second on the petitions. Moved Councillor Henderson, seconded Councillor Parry. Anyone against? Declare those carried. Announcements from the presiding officer. I have a couple. Firstly, in regards to the bushfire response, it's now been 100 days since the Wirraloo bushfire tore through our community and devastated properties throughout Gidgegannup. $4.6 million has been paid out from the Lord Mayor's disaster relief appeal to 200 applications across the City of Swan and the Shire of Mundaring. We have an incredible resilient community, and this funding is helping to fuel the recovery efforts and the rebuilding. However, there is a long road ahead, and we will be there for every step of the way. I want to acknowledge the exceptional hard work undertaken by the City of Swan staff and recognise the shared response with the Shire of Mundaring through the work of their President, John Daw, the City of Perth and the Lord Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund. State government agencies including Western Power and DFAS, and in particular, as well as non-government organisations including the Red Cross, Blaze Aid, Gidgegannup CWA, Disaster Relief Australia, EASE WA, Midlas, the Rapid Relief Team and the Salvation Army. And we thank all of those. In regards to the Governor-General's visit, His Excellency the Governor, the Honourable David Hurley, ACDSC retired Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, and Her Excellency Mrs Hurley visited the City of Swan community to reflect on the recent Wirraloo bushfire and to thank those involved in the recovery efforts on behalf of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Their Excellencies met with local residents in a fire-affected area last week and toured the devastated area to understand the destruction, noting the resilience of the local community in rebuilding and recovering from the disaster. And lastly, I'd like to also take the opportunity to acknowledge our recently appointed Freeman, Councillor John McNamara, Councillor Dave Lucas and Mrs Margaret Kitson received the prestigious honour for their outstanding level of achievement in the field of activity and exceptional contributions to the community over many decades. We've had to keep these appointments confidential for almost a year, so I'm very pleased that all three nominees accepted the appointment. Please join me in congratulating them. We're now on to 10.1, questions, which is members' questions which were taken on notice. There are questions from Councillor Johnson and Councillor McNamara which are answered, including the agenda. 10.2, which is questions which due notice has been given. And there are 32 questions there from Councillor Johnson which have been answered. Questions of which due notice has not been given. Any questions from any councillors? Councillor Callahan.
Thank you. My question is to Director, I'm sorry, your title, the planning officer, planning staff. I've just heard about lot 808/809 Morrison Road, and I couldn't find that on Landgate, and I couldn't find it on City of Swan Intramaps. And I did actually send an email to the CEO about that lot. And I wonder if right now I could actually be given some information as to what the location of that lot is.
Is it Annalyn?
It's a proposed lot, I should say.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Lot 808 and 809 are the future lots in the vicinity where you've got the Honda and Australia Post at the moment. So it includes the Honda, Australia Post and a section of the lot to the west thereof.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Scanlon, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question is to you, and I'd just like to ask you, for the benefit of the councillors that, for different reasons, didn't attend the mayoral dinner, and for the community, I'm wondering if you could provide an update on any positive outcomes from advocacy to the guests at the mayoral dinner. Happy for you to take it on notice.
I'll take it on notice and I'll send you something a little later. Any further questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see in the agenda 32 new questions from Councillor Johnson. A few questions to the CEO. How many staff were tied up to answer the questions? Second question, how many staff hours were spent on obtaining the answers? And number 3, at what cost was this to the ratepayer? Thank you.
I would suggest the CEO might be taking that one on notice.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that one on notice. It'll take me some time to work that out.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? None. Leave of absence, Mr. CEO.
Have no leave of absences,
No
Mr.
leave
Mayor.
of absence. Councillors, a resolution required for the confirmation of the minutes of the last council meeting on 14th April 2021. Moved Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Lucas. Anyone against? We'll carry that carried. Now move to items of business left over from the previous meeting. Item 13.6 is a Bellevue East Land Use Study Review, Bellevue East Land Use Study Review, and a proposed motion from Councillor Prodovnik.
Okay, so the motion is that Council resolve to 1. Note the status updates against each recommendation as detailed in Attachment 4, Bellevue East Land Use Study Recommendations, and the further submission by the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayer Association at the Council Forum meeting of the 5th of May 2021, whereby certain actions are believed to be incomplete. 2. Direct City staff to arrange a meeting with the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association, interested councillors and relevant staff to discuss the submitted list of items referred to in 1, to enable agreement to be reached on the objectives of those actions and how it would be dealt with in future. 3, direct City staff to liaise with the Department of Planning's Land and Heritage in relation to identifying changes in land use.
Councillor Prodovnik, is the rest as per the officer recommendation?
Oh, yes, sorry, it is.
Okay, then we're happy to just deal with the first 2 paragraphs. That's fine.
Sure. Did you want to record
You just
the
might
reason?
you might just need to read your reason.
Yep, sorry. We got carried away there. Record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is 1. The Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association has been lobbying for the implementation of key recommendations in the Bellis study for the past 8 years, and a number of items are yet to be completed. 2, including the Bellevue Landscaping Plan, verge tree planting, Todd and Station Park pedestrian railway crossing, Bellevue Road landscaping, a road entry statement to be installed at Horace Street, and a number of other clearly not completed items on the list. 3, a meeting with staff, councillors and the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association will help improve communication and enable agreement to be reached on the project's objectives.
Thank you, Councillor. Over seconder. Seconded Councillor Richardson. Is anyone against? Carried. We now move to Part B, the adoption of those recommendations contained items not withdrawn. So, councillors, I have items not withdrawn because that's the shortest list. 4.8 in Part B, 4.11, 4.12, 5.3, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 and 8.1. In the confidential folder, there is, wasn't it more than that? The only item we have withdrawn is C3.2 and what's the other one that's withdrawn? C3.1 and C3.2. Other withdrawn.
C3.1, C3.3
C1
are on block.
Yep. Okay, so they're the ones, councillors, that have not been withdrawn, so I move that they be adopted. Moved Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Kiley. Is anyone against? We'll declare those carried. We now move to the first item, which is item 3.1, and that's myself, so I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillor, I move that this item be deferred for consideration at the June meeting of Council to allow time for a council briefing to occur.
Seconded Councillor Kiley. Anyone against? Councillor Johnson, you wish to debate it?
Yep.
Councillor Bailey, if you can start your debate, thanks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the Kaleidoscope project was initially on for consideration in the budget. In budget discussions, it was my recollection that Council had asked for this to come to a briefing session, and I was somewhat surprised to find it on the agenda. Therefore, Councillors, I am deferring it for what I believe was requested at the budget briefing, and that was to have a briefing to Council.
Councillor Kiley is the seconder.
I'll reiterate those comments from the Mayor. I'd like to also get another briefing on it before we decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, my recollection was that the motion, this information was provided in the budget briefing as an idea by the Mayor, Councillor Bailey, and such motions, in my view, should be submitted in Section 3. So if a councillor has Section C, so if a councillor has a particular motion that they want to propose, I think that's where it should be. I don't think it's appropriate to defer it. I just think it should be voted down, and Councillor Bailey should resubmit it in Section C. That's my view.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? I'll speak for the deferment. It's my recollection from the budget briefing that Councillor Bailey was surprised to find it in the mix, and had said, and I think Ms Lay agreed at the time, that it should come back to a briefing of Council so we could all understand the scope of the proposal. So I'd be supporting the deferral. Come back to the June. I think the argument saying that it should just go into a certain section of the agenda, it's before us now. If we defer it for till the next meeting of Council, will give us time to have the briefing, and we can deal with the matter then, and we don't have to bring it back. Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour of deferment? I've got everyone other than Councillor Johnson. I declare that carried and hand back to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. That brings us now to item 4.1, which is the consideration of submissions for amendment number 103, local planning scheme number 17 to rezone 3 properties in Gidgegennup from general rural to special rural to facilitate smaller living opportunities. Councillor Lucas has declared an indirect financial interest and will leave the chamber. Councillor, need a mover for the officer's recommendation. Moved Councillor Zanino, seconded Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Declare that carried. Someone recall the Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillors. Now move to item 4.2, proposed amendment number 194 of the local planning scheme number 17 to modify special use zone number 24 Rosehill Waters Estate, multiple properties in South Guildford, and a motion from Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask you if you'd like me to move both motions for item 4.2 and 4.3 concurrently, so I can use one speech for the both of them. Would that please?
No, they're two separate motions, two separate plans.
Absolutely fine. Okay. So I'll begin with 4.2. So it's the proposed amendment. My iPad's playing up. My proposed amendment to number 194 to local planning scheme number 17 to modify the special use zone number 24 Rosehill Waters Estates, multiple properties in South Guildford. My motion is that the council resolve to not support Amendment number 194 to Local Planning Scheme number 17, and record the reason for changing the officer's recommendation that increased density of two areas from R20 to R30 is not in keeping with the historic rural character of Rosehill, and residents will still be affected by aircraft noise, increased traffic, parking issues and lack of public transport.
Have a seconder? Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Hello, Councillor Jones. Wish to debate it? Okay. Councillor Scanlon, if you can open your debate.
Thank you. So I'm bringing this motion forward because Rosehill Waters was zoned R20, and that is more in keeping with a residential area. The reasons I'm giving, and I'll go through them one by one, are aircraft noise, increased traffic, parking, and lack of transport. So if we begin with aircraft noise. So there's a claim that the noise corridor affecting the Rosehill estate hasn't changed, isn't quite right. The number of incidents has temporarily reduced, but it's planned to increase and exceed the initial values, and it's not really suitable for additional developments, especially in areas closer to the 25-30 ANEF corridor. The request to increase housing density is also based on reduced sound levels with the new runway, but the noise volume of takeoff and landing has not decreased, and we've heard this evening that noise attenuation measures may not be forthcoming. We've increased traffic. The new plans before us will see an increase of nearly 400 vehicle movements a day, which will add to the existing congestion on the roads and safety concerns, particularly at the already busy Queen's Road, Great Eastern Highway intersection. This is a major safety issue, and with the left-turning cars blocking your view, crossing right onto Great Eastern Highway is extremely dangerous and an accident zone. Approximately 3,000 vehicles per day use Queen's Road. It's a Category F intersection, the worst we can have for a reason. There have been anecdotally many car accidents here, but unfortunately I was unable to get the crash data in time. The other routes available are Water Street to turn onto East Street, another very dangerous intersection. I can't imagine how many complaints the staff receive about these two intersections. It's been suggested that people can cut through the small residential streets at Kidman Ave and Hyman Street to turn onto Kalamunda Road. But these are old, narrow, bendy roads, and they're simply not designed to take large amounts of traffic, certainly not trucks. The community have been lobbying for safety at these intersections for years, as I'm sure the staff can attest to. So the community have come up with several options: possible alternative route, local traffic only sign, closing off Queen's Road to Great Eastern Highway, installing traffic calming measures, renaming Great Eastern Highway, Old Great Eastern Highway, doing a whole of area traffic study. So during the week, I sought comment on every single option the community have, and the staff came back to me with, unfortunately, doesn't look like any of them are feasible, certainly not in the near future, leaving us with the dangerous route that we have now. So consider public transport. Greater density, more people, public transport's essential. In order to get to Rosehill, from Rosehill to Guildford train station, you might catch the one bus servicing Rosehill. So you get that bus to Midland and then the train to Guildford. Google Maps told me to catch an Uber. The pedestrian route from Rosehill to Guildford is unsafe because there is no footpath on the Rosehill side of Great Eastern Highway from Queen's Road and over the bridge. If you happen to be travelling in school hours, you might get the lollipop person, you might not. Parking is already a major problem within the estate, as we heard this evening from Mr Van Parath, and most driveways have insufficient space to park a car without hindering the pedestrian walkways. When you consider other infrastructure, the schools, the facilities and amenities to serve as higher density living, particularly the local primary schools, that cannot accommodate an increased population such as this. The catchment is Guildford Primary School, a heritage listed school which has adopted the Guildford Primary Conservation Plan to cap numbers at 300. You all have a letter in front of you from the P&C stating this. Unfortunately, the Department of Education still lists it as 370, which is why we've heard from the developer that the local schools can facilitate these children. Could families then choose to send their children to Woodbridge Primary School? Well, maybe, but it's not their catchment and it's independent, so they may say no. So we've got several reasons why this development is not suitable to have increased zoning of R30. You'll note most residential areas are at R20 for a reason. So, and just to finish with quoting Mr Ben Parath, he said the area was sold on heritage, nature and a country feel. Please, let's keep it that way.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Councillor Johnson, as a seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, well, as a seconder, Mr Mayor, that's one of the best speeches I've heard in this chamber. I actually can't add anything to it.
Thank you. Councillor Jones against the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief. The historical character of the area doesn't exist really anymore as it's already been developed. The purpose of the scheme amendment is to remove the R20 density restriction to reflect the latest ANEF mapping for Perth Airport, which makes the proposal consistent with the state government policy that does not specify any restrictions on development outside the 2025 ANEF. Thank you.
Okay. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers against the motion? Councillor Scanlon, your right of reply.
Thank you very much. All I really have to reiterate is that the noise will still be there. Rose Hill is very proximal to the landing and takeoff path, and those planes are very loud. Although the number of movements is temporarily decreased with the opening of the other runway, this runway will still be in use. That noise will still be there, and we've heard this evening that the noise attenuation features may not go ahead. So I'm really concerned about us moving for R30 development in such a noise-affected area. It does affect people's health. So, and with the historical aspect of South Guildford, there is a lot of historical features that do remain, and most notably is the lodge and the stables. So most people in the area will be very familiar with Rose Hill Lodge and Stables. I know friends that got married there. It's a beautiful building. Now, unfortunately, we will lose the stables. The developer is going to be demolishing the stables soon. The community is devastated because they were the Padbury stables, very significant to the community, but we still retain the historical lodge. It's a country feel. It backs down onto the walkway along the Helena River. This area is a beautiful area with wildlife and birds, and people bought into it for a reason. We owe it to the people that have bought into Rose Hill Estate to uphold the R20 zoning. Please support my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Put the vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Motion is lost. 8-7. Now move to item 4.3.
I withdraw the motion.
Lost, yeah. 8-7. So I need a mover for the staff recommendation. Moved Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Parry. Anyone against? There is. Do we wish to debate it again? No. Okay. Put the staff recommendation. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Councillor Scanlon, you voting? Thank you. It's the sixth. Staff recommendation carried 9-6. Now, Councillor Scanlon, did you say you wanted to withdraw the next one? So you don't wish to proceed that one?
I don't wish to proceed with 4.3.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. Do I don't need to move that? Okay. Okay. So, Councillor... No. That was 4.2. So 4.3, Councillor Scanlon no longer wishes to move that motion. However, I do need a move of the staff recommendation. Moved to Councillor Jones. Second to Councillor Parry. Is anyone against? Rish? No. Thank you, councillors. The vote. Those in favour? Councillor McNamara, you with us? Start those in favour of the staff recommendation on item 4.3.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, are you prompting?
No, I just wasn't sure that Councillor McNamara was with us, that was all. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against? Is 9-6. Okay, we now move to item 4.4, the responsible authority report to amend aspects of approval for upgraded existing facilities, Lot 900, Great Eastern Highway, Guildford. Councillor Parry has declared an indirect financial interest and has left the room. Need a mover for the staff recommendation. Move Councillor Congleton. Seconder. Councillor Jones. Is anyone against? Carried. Recall Councillor Parry. Now we move to item 4.5, the responsible authority report, pros dual tenancy on development of warehouse light industry and housing, including earthworks at lot 119 Lakes Road, Hazelmere, and it's Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to recommend that the Metro Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel refuse the application for the proposed development at lot 119 Lakes Road, Hazelmere, for the following reasons. The final design of the Lloyd Street Lakes Road Peanut Roundabout is still not finalised and is unknown at this time. What the access implications, if any, will be for lot 119 Lakes Road. Lot 119 on the other side of Vale Road to 18 Lakes Road, lots 121 Vale Road and lot 300 Vale Road, which are part of a group of 9 rural residential properties around the lake that are used for residential purposes and equestrian pursuits. The noise from a logistics operation operating 7 days a week, 365 days a year, Monday and Friday, 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m, and Saturday and Sunday mornings is incompatible with rural values. The rural residential land on the other side of Vale Road cannot be rezoned to light industrial as it is a buffer to the southern lake, which has environmental value. There is no information in the report to confirm that the acoustic wall would provide protection to neighbouring sensitive receptors that include horses. To recommend that the Metro Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel visit the site.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Scanlon. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Councillor Anderson? Okay. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To understand the impact of this motion, you need to visit the site or look at a map, and apologies, I didn't bring one with me, but you can look it up by using Google Maps on your Vale Road. There are 2 lakes, quite big lakes, north and south. Presently, the South Lake has water in it, the northern one does not. Around each lake are 10 rural residential properties, each with a pie chart slice of the lake as part of its land title. To the west is the ARC Infrastructure Goods train line, and beyond that to the west is urban South Guildford. To the east of the lake's properties is the newly industrialised part of Hazelmere on the eastern side of Vale Road, where this development is proposed. The Hazelmere Lakes properties cannot be rezoned as industrially as they include the lakes, which take up about 50% of the area of the land on each title. In addition, the lakes properties form a buffer between the industrial area of Hazelmere and the residential area of South Guildford to the west. The amenity of this rural residential land is deserving of protection. The land is used for rural residential living, and as you have read, horses are kept on the land. Look, I don't know much about horses myself, Mr Mayor, but I know some councillors here do. But I think that a 24-hour operation of a warehouse facility is incompatible with keeping horses. As one of the objectors, Susan Miles, says, we use our rural residential land for the purpose of training and racing horses, and also have recreational horses. If this development is approved, we will be denied using our property for the purpose we obtained it, and I've used it for well over 30 years. The dangers to both horse and human will be too great. Councillors, Mr Mayor, in addition, the proposal does not... let me start again. The proposal does include an acoustic wall, but there is no information in the report about the design performance of the wall. If night-time noise levels in the area right now are less than 40 decibels at night, which is sort of a whisper, is a 3.5 metre acoustic wall going to maintain the same low levels of sound to protect the horses? I'm particularly thinking, Mr Mayor, about reversing trucks and the reversing beepers should that occur at 2 a.m. in the morning. Mr Mayor and Council, I believe if this development is approved by the JDAP, this last remaining rural residential lifestyle on these 20 properties in the lakes part of Hazelmere will be compromised and will be permanently damaged. So, councillors, I urge you to oppose this particular development on this site in the hope that a more suitable development that does not have such great impact will be proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scanlon is the seconder.
I'll just be brief, Mr Mayor. There's just a few words I'd like to read out, and they were sent to be Mrs Susan Miles also. Now, Mrs Susan Miles is the most affected resident to this application. So this application will see huge RAV4 B-double set trucks and semi-trailers unloading and loading, coming and going 365 days of a year, she says, along with 2 gigantic warehouses and 166 associated car parking bays, all immediately opposite our property, barely 50 metres from her home. Now, can you imagine having such a facility 50 metres from your home, where she's built this rural lifestyle with her horses, where her mother lived in the same area? She said to me that her mother thought this would be resolved by the time she died. She died 25 years ago. This area has been under encroachment from the industrial growth for a great number of years. When I was a child, driving through that area, well, I wasn't driving as a child, but, you know, when I was being driven through, there was rural properties. There were trees, animals, paddocks. Most of them have gone, but not this little pocket. And this lady and the generations before her have made it their lifestyle home. Please allow her to continue living the lifestyle she's made there. She says it's not forever. Just please don't allow this particular development yet. Allow another more suitable development will probably come along for the area. It's just not fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tendon. Councillor Henderson.
Briefly, Mr Mayor, first things first. Under LPS 17, zoned light industry. Under MRS, industrial. And we all know that Hazelmere has been, as you said, under industrial encroachment for probably, I'd say, 30 years. In fact, I even looked at buying a block in Hazelmere many years ago and didn't, because I realised that ultimately there would be significant changes in the area. And as most people know, I ended up buying in the Swan Valley. The point is that there is a move for development of the area. The landowners have the appropriate zoning, and because of those reasons, I don't believe that we can change anything other than to allow them their use. Just to make a point about horses, horses are interesting creatures. If you put them in a 100-acre paddock and they don't see anyone, and you throw a plastic bag down the middle of the paddock with the wind, they'll panic. Whereas if they see things regularly and they're used to it, they become very familiar with it and don't care one little bit. So the issue with horses being upset by the development is that I believe they'll become very familiar with it very quickly. So, councillors, I don't believe we can refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker for the motion? Further speakers against the motion? Councillor Podovnik.
From what I understand, there's only one person who's objected to it, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me. Who has contacted me, however, is the Hazelmere Action Group, and they've actually asked to put a different position forward, and I think there's 20 members. They also live nearby. So I'm just going to read what they said because it's short and to the point. So it says, our Group C development is something that will shine a light on our plight. Add to that the new road development as well. The land is zoned for industrial development, and so it follows that it will be developed as industrial anyway. We are zoned rural residential, but any attempts in the past to try and do this has never been allowed. Now we are totally surrounded by industrial, with subsequent noise, dust and light, which will only increase going forward, so it will shine a light on our plight. Add to this that all attempts to sell our properties have failed as well. I have letters from my agent and from 2 attempts, and having spoken to the agents for the other sellers, they all say the same. No certainty regarding zoning, not willing to invest and wait forever for something to happen. They're interested in the land only. The land is not suitable for rural pursuits any longer, and the lakes are now dry, both dry. So they're basically letting us know that they strongly support this motion, not Ian's motion. Officer's recommendation, sorry.
Is Speaker against the motion? Any others for the motion? Okay, Councillor Scanlon, Councillor Johnson, sorry, your right of reply.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's quite a challenging one, this, but when dealing with the Hazelmere Lakes Action Group, which is a group of people I'm very familiar with, I'm familiar with the quandary they're in and the dilemma they're in. I believe that the land needs to be preserved for rural values. It needs to stay as rural residential, and we need to be careful what we approve immediately adjacent to it. I think more thought should have been put into a buffer zone around it, and for that reason I think this particular development is inappropriate. The email from one person concerning Lakes Action Group was an email. I had 2 emails from this same person, and my response was, can you please, when you reply, on behalf of a large group, to CC in all the other people so that we are confident that your voice is representative of that group, because I'm not aware that this particular person is, that there is an association and this particular person is the spokesperson for that group. So I said, if you can demonstrate you're the spokesperson by repeating your email, CCing in everybody else in the group, I'll be happy to take that as representative of the group, and I would then consider my position. But I didn't get that. So that didn't happen to me, and I don't know if Councillor Prodovnik got an email that was from one objector, from one person, CC'd to the other members of the Lakes Action Group. So for that reason, I proceeded with my motion because I believe it is in the best interests of the area. So councillors, it's a fact we've only got one objector, but we don't have an association stating that they object to it. That is, in my view, not actually the case. I know they've got some interesting views on it, but basically it's one email for, one email against. And if you've been to the site, you'd see that it's not appropriate to build something so intense immediately adjacent to rural residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor, put the vote. Those in favour of Councillor Johnson's motion? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? Oh, sorry, Councillor McNamara hiding over there. So 6. And those in favour are the rest. Is against Councillor Johnson's motion. So that's lost 9-6. Move of the officer's recommendation. Moved Councillor Henderson. Seconded Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? We don't want to do it again now. Okay. There's that's carried. That will be 13-2. Yeah, the vote against. Okay, well, I'd ask those against. I put 2 hands up here. Okay. Right. Those against the officer's recommendation. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Just carried 11-5. Okay, next one. 10-5. Sorry, yep, my maths is failing me. So we now move to 4.6, which is a modification of condition 6 for approval, DA 55-2019 Transport Depot at Lot 22, number 1370, Great Northern Highway, Upper Swan. And a motion from Councillor McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to defer consideration of this matter to a future ordinary meeting of Council to allow further consultation to be conducted with the adjoining neighbours, and also to allow time for a traffic study to be completed on the impact of the proposed second crossover. Thank you.
Seconder? Okay, just a quick question. Councillor, who's paying for the traffic study?
I am unsure, Mr. Mayor. I reckon if we defer it, we'll find that out.
Well, I think we probably need to. You might just need to put that in there, Councillor, that just to clarify that the applicant's going to pay for it.
Impose a penalty on anybody, a developer or
Okay.
Can I suggest?
Thank you. I'll propose the amendment.
Yeah,
and that is that the traffic study is undertaken by the proponent. Okay, thanks.
Is that okay with the mover and the seconder?
No, I have a question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Congerton.
In that motion, it is obligating the current owner to pay for a assessment in reference to a deferral. So how can you defer the item and then impose that onto... So that's my question. How can you move a deferral and then impose a cost to the applicant to carry out traffic assessment when he may be sitting at home saying, why, I don't even want this?
Well, the option is...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, please.
Well, hang on. I've already got one over here, but it's not okay with the mover and the seconder, I assume? No? Okay.
Explanation, Mr Mayor.
An explanation from you. Okay, Councillor.
Yes, Mr Mayor. My reason for not imposing this is because the young man who made this application originally has passed away. And I just cannot impose on his family, a wife and 3 kids, the actual imposition of a cost. First of all, I don't know can they afford it, and second of all, I don't know do they want it. So basically, that's the reason, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay. In fact, then, Councillor, you're going to move it. I need a seconder to the amendment.
Well, if it's not, if the mover I'll withdraw it. Yeah, if it's not acceptable to the mover
well, normally
of the
we would
motion,
debate
I'll
it, but
withdraw
if you
that.
withdraw it, okay,
Yeah,
so
that was just
that comes out. So we go back to the motion. I've got a mover and a seconder for the deferral. Councillor Congan, you wish to amend it?
Yes, I do, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor, with your indulgence. So I would like to see it read as defer consideration of this matter to a future ordinary meeting of Council to allow further consultation with the applicant and the adjoining neighbours. Full stop.
I'm happy with that, Mr Mayor.
Okay. We're all happy with that amendment? Okay, that becomes the motion. Now I've got a mover and a seconder. Is anyone against? Good. Okay, that carried.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, we now move to item 4.7, which is a use of the portion of the land for cafe restaurant at lot number 17, 703 Nangara Road in Lexia. And there's the amended motion for the councillors and a motion from Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a proposed motion that for this item to defer consideration of this matter to a future ordinary meeting of Council to allow the applicant and owner to meet with the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation and negotiate a possible solution.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Parry. Is anyone against? Declare that carried. We now move to item 4.9, the addition of a single house at lot 2149, number 324 Peachy Road, Janebrook, and Councillor Podolnik. Just wait till we... No, he's just gone to the toilet, I think, isn't he? Don't recall him yet. Okay. Councillor Podolnik.
So the motion is that Council resolve to defer consideration of the proposed addition to single house lot 2149 Peachy Road, Janebrook, until the ordinary meeting of Council of the 7th of July 2020 in order to 1. Allow time for interested councillors to visit the site, and 2. Enable councillors to investigate a series of claims that were made at the 5th of May agenda forum.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Scanlon. Is anyone against?
I wish to make an amendment, Mr Mayor.
You want to move an amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay,
just to the 9th of June 2021 next council meeting, not 2 council meetings afterwards, to expedite the process.
So you're both happy to move that to the June meeting?
So 9th of June, Mr Mayor, I asked Ms Albright already.
Okay. All right. We've got a mover and a seconder with the amendment of the date. Is anyone against? No, clear that carried. Now 4.10 is the proposed winery incidental cellar door parking of commercial vehicles at lot 53, number 37 Scrivener Road. Councillor Zanino has declared a proximity interested and is leaving the chamber. Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, as this not withdrawn, I need a mover for the officer's recommendation. Move Councillor Henderson. I have a seconder. Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Declare that carry. We'll call Councillor Zanino.
So we able to make some comments? Or?
No. Sorry, but comments finished.
What do you mean? We're just sitting all night to have the opportunity to provide feedback on this proposal.
No, you should have notified us you want to make a statement. We're now into the bulk of the general public statements and so forth are finished.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I move to dissent against your ruling there.
Right.
So how do we know that?
Well,
can I please put it to the vote that we allow the people waiting in the gallery to speak because they weren't aware of our process?
I'm sorry, Councillor, but the item's been dealt with and we have voted and moved it. We're now moving on to the next item, which is item 4.1, the bulk waste collection service, and a motion from Councillor Congleton. 5.1, yeah.
Councillors, 5.1 proposed motion is that the Council resolve to adopt the officer's recommendation with the addition of Part 2 as follows. Implement a system that would allow up to 2 passes per annum for commercial properties in the city to dispose of limited amount of material to the city's Ballsbrook.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Coley.
Mr Mayor, can I continue?
Yes, Councillor Congleton, thank you.
For the city to dispose of limited amounts of material to the city's Ballsbrook and Malaga recycling centres commencing on the 1st of December 2021, conditions will apply. The reason for changing the staff recommendation is to allow commercial properties to utilise the city's facilities.
Seconder from Councillor McNamara. Is anyone against?
Question.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, my question is, what would the scope be and the impact be? This seems potentially open-ended. If every commercial property in the city has got 2 passes, how many commercial properties are there? And what would the scale and cost of it be? Would it not be better to have a report?
Mr. Coates?
Well, the short answer is we don't know, and that's what and Councillor Congleton has included in there the comment that conditions will apply, so the volume would be limited and it certainly would be something that would be monitored by staff, and if the facilities are unable to cope, then a report would come back to Council.
Councillor Coley, question?
Just a question. Am I wrong in assuming that a system that would allow up to 2 passes per annum could provide for none or 1 or 2?
Up to Mr. Coates.
Well, up to 2 would mean none or 1 or 2. Yeah, but not all residential properties use the facilities. I would expect that not all commercial properties would use them either.
Councillor Callahan.
What kind of materials do you think would be being disposed of?
Mr. Coates.
Well, it would be construction and demolition waste, tyres, plastics, cardboard, paper, mattresses, timber.
Recyclables, yeah.
Where else?
Carry on, Councillor.
What other options do commercial properties have for dealing with that particular waste?
Well, it depends on the amount that they generate. A number of them use the city's bin service. Some of them who generate a larger amount of waste have got contracts with private waste suppliers, so they've got larger bins. There's a range of different arrangements in place.
Further questions? No?
I've got one more question, Mr Mayor. How would we monitor this? So Mr Curtin said we could monitor it, but how would we know that the person arriving is from a commercial property? Will the pass be marked, pass number 1 of 2, commercial property recycling?
Yeah, if we issue passes, they would be, we haven't worked out the exact system, but we do have sort of situations like that with barcodes and things like that on tip passes at Red Hill so that they can be tracked.
Okay, now the questions, I've got a mover and a seconder. Is anyone against? No one against. Carried. I now move to item 5.2, the naming of parks in Clementine Estate and Upper Swan. Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Support the Upper Swan District's Ratepayers and Residents Association's proposal for the naming of parks in the Clementine Estate. 2. Submit the proposed names to Landgate no earlier than the 30th of July 2021. 3. Request that the Upper Swan District Ratepayers and Residents Association to provide any additional supporting information for the naming of the parks prior to the 30th of July 2021. 4. Advise the Upper Swan District's Ratepayers and Residents Association and Satterley accordingly. And 5. Record the reason for changing the recommendation is to allow the local history and heritage of the area to be recognised in the names of the parks and to allow the Upper Swan Districts and Ratepayers Association, Residents Association adequate time to collate additional support information.
Seconder, Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Carried. Item 5.4 is the proposed duplication of Nangara Road, Henley Brook Avenue to Edgerton Drive. Proposed motion from Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I alternate motion 5.4, proposed duplication of Nangara Road and Henley Brook Avenue to Egerton Drive, that the Council resolve to 1. Not proceed with the duplication of Nangara Road between Henley Brook Avenue to Egerton Drive. 2. Advise the admitters of Council's decision accordingly. And 3. Advise the Federal Government that the urban congestion funding of $1.6 million for this project will be no longer required. The reason for changing the recommendation is 1. The community do not want or need the duplication, as the traffic volume does not warrant it and it's not best use of funding. 2. To retain the approximate 61 mature trees, mostly London plane trees. 3. To retain the rural amenity and uphold the Swan Valley Planning Act. 4. To prevent the potential negative impact on house prices. 5. Noise pollution impacts on students, teachers at Swan Valley Anglican Community School and the property and business owners nearby. 6. To prevent speeding vehicles and an increase in traffic, potential bottlenecks at Nangara and West Swan Road roundabout. 7. The disruption and damage to properties while the road is being constructed. And 8. The financial implications to ratepayers, the $3.2 million, for a very short amount of road with little benefit.
Seconder. Seconder, Councillor Johnson. Is anyone against? There is. Do you wish to debate it? Councillor Richardson. You open the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, Nangara Road is a beautiful rural road that leaves the Swan Valley and continues to border the adjoining acreage blocks. It's a part of the Swan Valley tourist experience, hosting the popular Edgecombe Brothers Winery and Swan Valley Sisters small cafe and produce stall and the newly completed bike path. Averley approaches with a beautiful green expanse of lawned park and playground, followed by Swan Valley Anglican School, set behind the beautiful fountain. Across the road, property owners and visitors, regular drivers in the area, treated to sights of horses, alpacas, cows and ducks and other sorts of small animals. On the left are quiet rural small acreage lots, and to the right are a predominant row of beautiful mature London plane trees, with some native trees and approximately 61 trees in total, and bordering the school oval and the courts on the right. These trees were planted in the early 2000s by a developer as an entry statement to Averley and Ellenbrook, and they do just that. The rural ambience continues up to the roundabout connecting with Henley Brook Avenue. The view of water on the left and the shops on the right, and continuing on the road remains a single lane carriageway with beautiful wide open space to the left and right to Lord Street, Pinnister Parade roundabout. The simplicity and space adds to the pleasure and amenity for people walking their dogs and jogging. Over the next 2 financial years, the City is proposing to duplicate Nangara Road between Henley Brook Avenue and Egerton Drive. City of Swan officers undertook traffic counts in August 2019 for this section east of Henley Brook Avenue and indicated 17,372
17,377 vehicles per day travel on Nangara Road single carriageway. This exceeded their 15,000 vehicles per day trigger, which indicates that duplication is required. In March 2021, City staff undertook community consultation for duplication, with letters being delivered to adjacent frontages. Have Your Say page, which was established, targeting the wider community. So 61 responses were received, of which there were 40 objections and 21 in favour. It's noted in the officer's report that Swan Valley Regional Networks received an additional 37 responses of support from their members, but did not conclusively state where those members lived. So today I spoke with Tara Farrell, owner of Swan Valley Sisters, who had not heard anything about the proposal and who was adamant this should not occur, nor the money be spent, as is Gail and Alfred Edgecombe from Edgecombe Brothers Winery. Alfred has come along tonight and is in the public gallery, and also had not been consulted either by letter, phone or in person. Gail, who asked it to be known that she rang the City of Swan approximately 3 weeks ago inquiring about what was happening with the roads both sides of their property. Gail was put through to the assets team and stated to the young man on the phone that there had been a road gazetted through their property on the Nangara side of Swan Valley Sisters through to the back of the property where paintball currently is conducted. The response from the staff member was, "Who told you?" And she replied, "I would not like to disclose who." And then he replied, "I can't tell you anything, it's a secret." This is to be followed up post-meeting. Taking the 40 objections, as over half the respondents were against the proposed duplication for the following reasons. The duplication is not needed as the traffic volume does not warrant it and it's not the best use of funding. Retention of mature trees. The trees will significantly impact the amenity if removed, and the cost to prepare them for transplanting is approximately $10,000 each. This option would add an extra $610,000 to the project. The loss of rural amenity, as is known, property owners purchased their properties in good faith for that rural lifestyle and they're now facing a dual carriageway to look at. Noise pollution to the construction will be constant from Monday to Friday, 8 till 5 p.m, when students are at school and teachers are teaching. Recess and lunch and outdoor sporting activities during that time, not to mention after school during homework time. And there will be no let-up, no break continuing on Saturdays 8 till 5 p.m, when parents are trying to have a restful weekend with their families and visitors want to spend their weekend enjoying the quiet ambience of the Swan Valley. Ratepayers are asking, why is the City of Swan spending this amount of money on such a short road when we are tightening our belts during COVID? It's not
15
essential.
seconds remaining, Councillor.
We have other roads in Ellenbrook that have not been completed. Councillors, I urge you to listen to the community members who took the time to respond to that community survey and to vote for my alternate motion to stop the duplication of Nangara Road to Egerton Drive. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Johnson is the seconder.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I suggest that councillors turn to page, looks like 380 in the agenda, and you can see there in blue the location where the road is going to be upgraded. The question I'd like, I guess it's a rhetorical question, does not need an answer. Councillors, Mr Mayor, we need to ask ourselves what's going to happen in the future between Egerton Drive and West Swan Road, because it's kind of clear if we're going to dual carriageway this, we're probably going to dual carriageway the last section to West Swan Road. And if we do that, how's that going to impact Edgecombe Brothers Winery? So, councillors, if there's a lot of traffic along this section of the road, there will be just as much along the section between Egerton Drive and West Swan Road. It's my view. So, councillors, I'm concerned that the dual carriageway, a future dual carriageway in that location would impact on the winery and the viability of it. And so then one has to ask whether this section of dual carriageway is necessary. My next point really is purely financial. So my understanding is the total cost of construction less the grants is $2.35 million over 2 years. So, councillors, given that nobody wants the road and it's not really necessary, I'll come to that later, this is a quick way of reducing rates. Councillors, the trigger for traffic is 15,000 vehicles per day.
Yet the traffic counts indicate that 17,377 vehicles were using this section of Nangara Road. Councillors, that's just 15% over the trigger. So, probably there ought to be a bit of a margin for error or a sort of a range that's used, not just a strict 15,000. There ought to be a bit of flexibility here. So, given that, as Councillor, oh blimey, I forgot your name, Councillor. as the mover of the motion has said, Councillor Richardson, it's kind of something that, frankly, isn't really needed. We don't need it. And then there's the impact on the trees. Realistically, if we are going to go ahead with this, Mr. Mayor, we're going to have to pay another $610,000 to move these trees. So, councillors, my view is this: it's not wanted. It's going to lead to problems later for other small businesses. We can save some money. So I recommend councillors voting for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Just ask the CEO if you can just correct a statement. On
Thank you,
this
Mr.
debate.
Mayor. Just if I can just go through Councillor Richardson, just to clarify that in point 8 we say the financial implications to ratepayers are $3.2 million. Just conferring with Mr. Coaten, in 21-22 the impact is $1.6 million because there's some grant funding coming in. And then in 22-23, there's 2/3 of grant funding for that second stage, which then has an impact of $770,000 on ratepayer funds, which brings a total of $2,370,000. And I'm just wondering whether you wanted to amend that point 8 to that effect of ratepayer. 2370. 2370. Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Speaker against the motion.
2370.
Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this road has been planned to be a dual carriageway for many years, and provision has been made in our metropolitan region scheme for this purpose. Nangara Road is now probably and approximately, I may stand to be corrected, 90% dualled. We speak about rural ambience, views, etc. Since the dualling has occurred over a number of years, we still have farmland and horses along both sides of that road. We still have views in different aspects. We've been lobbying for funding for dualling Nangara Road for many years. We're seeing another section of this done for certain reasons, specific reasons that lead well into the long term for our community of vision for providing for and accommodating increasing populations and things that are happening with developments in our area. If we decide that the project won't go ahead and we return this funding to the federal government, and federal funding is hard to obtain, it will damage the city's reputation for future funding requests. We've talked about traffic volumes, and yes, there are over 17,000 vehicles per day. This dual carriageway, yes, it should have been constructed several years ago when traffic volumes reached 15,000 per day. And if we're looking at traffic studies and when things need to go ahead according to trigger points, safety of people, cars, pedestrians, etc., and even businesses along that road, again, let's look at the long-term vision for what's needed in our developing communities. Funding has been approved by the federal government to come from the Urban Congestion Fund. As the name suggests, this funding program is for projects that will reduce congestion, and we do have it at times. We see eases of that congestion where we already have the dualling. It will reduce travel times and reduce vehicle operating costs and deliver a more reliable road network and improve road safety. This is not the start of a dualling program. This is the continuation of something that is possibly about 90% dual. This is a continuation to finish a project. We always understand that with any projects we are going to get two sides of the fence. We are going to get people who are for things and against things, and we do get objections, and I believe it is absolutely imperative that we listen to community and we take community's viewpoints on, but also as councillors for the whole of the City of Swan, with the future of the City of Swan under our decision-making processes, we also need to look with vision down the track of what our developing communities need. And yes, I understand there are specific objections which may involve emotive reasons for some people, and I totally honour and respect those. Mature trees, again, it is something that is so important, and things that we have to look at in different areas where, with reasonable consideration, we need to fight for those things. In this case, there are some trees that are going to need to go with this long-term vision for the benefit of our community. Speeding vehicles with the dualling of it, I think we're going to see more limited issues with vehicles because we have a road that is enabling appropriate vehicular movement. And if we're talking about aspects of the school, during the construction process, yes, there is inconvenience caused, but in the long term, it is going to actually make it safer for the school along that road as well, with what's planned with the dualling. So, councillors, I urge you to vote against this motion, and I will foreshadow that if this motion is defeated, I will move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Speaker for the motion. Speaker, Councillor Colley.
Just quickly, Mayor, and thank you. I'm speaking for the motion. I'd note that there's 40 objections and 21 in favour, and I think the community have spoken in respect to this motion. Just something that Councillor McCulloch said, that we have to. It would damage our reputation if we didn't go ahead and spend this money that we were granted in a grant. I don't think we should be making decisions on the fact that we were given money to spend. I know completely what Councillor McCulloch is saying, but I don't think it should be a consideration when community concerns, the volume of community concern overrides that sort of consideration. So we've got our own budgetary considerations. We need to consider what our needs are. As Councillor Johnson pointed out, this would save us money in the short term, and that would assist in ensuring we get our rates down this year. I think that's of great concern to the community as well. So please don't accept the fact that because the money's there, we have to use it. And on another point, emotive issues. I think trees, they're not emotive issues, they're trees. They provide good amenity for the community. I can see Councillor Parry smiling there, thinking, no, they're just...
Sorry, clarification, Mr Mayor, that was separate to the trees.
Oh, I was... Yep. If I could explain that, I was just looking at some of the reasons for objection, and there was trees. There's another objection about the egress from Roberts Road, I believe, that would make it a lot more dangerous to get out of that street there. So the road. So there may be emotive issues there, but I'm sure there are some serious issues there as well too. So I'm supporting the motion and backing the community on this.
Speaker against the motion. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to add a few things. Some people remember when Nangara Road to the west of Ellenbrook was a single carriageway. Traffic volumes increased to over 20,000 vehicles a day on that section before the dual carriageway was constructed. That section of road often had major accidents and regular fatalities until the dual carriageway was constructed. The city should construct the second carriageway now while we have the design and the funding for it. If we delay, we lose the funding, and then our ratepayers will pay for this road. Thank you.
Any speakers for the motion? Speakers against? Question.
Just a question. In respect of saying no to the funding now, does that prevent or does it make us less likely to get the funding for the same portion of road in the future?
Mr Coaten?
Well, I can't say for sure, but I think we'd have some fairly pointed questions to ask in relation to why we applied for this funding, given it back, and then applied for it again at a later date. So I can't confirm, I can't answer that, but that would be the situation that we would be in. So I expect that we would be asked, why did you give this money back, and why are you now applying for it again?
Councillor Gillano?
And also, Mr Coaten, I was just wondering if you have any statistics on the number of crashes on this section of Nangara Road that's proposed to be dual.
Mr Coaten?
I don't have them to hand. I don't think.
Thanks, Mr. Caton. Any further speakers? Okay, councillors. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. If you look at the last community comment, item number 61, there's a fatal crash there involving a motorcyclist in 2019 at the corner of Roberts Street. So I'd like to speak against the motion, Mr. Mayor. I mean, some of the objections I can understand. No one wants more traffic travelling near or past your place where you live. But we have to be realistic, councillors. The City of Swan's population is almost going to double in the next 30 years, and a lot of it will be just to the north in the Upper Swan development, and they'll want to travel south and get into Allenbrook and head south and what have you. But when I read through some of the objectors, it says, don't waste your money on duplicating it, build a 50-metre pool and swimming pool in Allenbrook, not a 25-metre pool. Well, a 50-metre pool is not feasible, so therefore I don't think his rationale is feasible. Also, if you take the time to read through the support letters, you'll find that they're from community groups as well. So the Swan Valley and Regional Networks made a submission on behalf of 37 other residents, and the Swan Valley Tourism Alliance, a community group, have made it on behalf of their network of members. So if you add those two lots together, I think you'll now find that the support for the duplication is outweighing the numbers who objected, and some of the objections were for very personal reasons about, as I said, building a bigger pool. But councillors, we must listen to our traffic engineers. 2 years ago, the trigger point was reached when this road had needed upgrading. The traffic will only continue to grow and make it unsafe. This has been a staged approach because of the cost of building roads. We've now got Nangarra Road dualled all the way from Wanneroo Road right through to the where this one's going to start at, I'll just forget the name of the street, but where the Hungry Jacks is, Edgerton Drive, sorry, and is now and will be staged down to the next major intersection, and in several years' more time, subject to hopefully some more federal grant funding, continued all the way down to West Swan Road. This is about planning for the future and the future traffic growth. We can't put our heads in the sand and take the residents' comments, oh, it's not busy, we don't need it, we're going to lose some trees. Yeah, I'm upset about losing some trees as well, but for every tree removed, they'll be replanted, the number will be replanted at a spot on the road reserve where they don't have to be removed in the future. It's unfortunate it's taken almost 20 years since the developer put in those lovely London plane trees, but now the time has come, we need to look forward to the traffic growth. And as it says in the officer's responses, saying this is the concerns raised by the public, the duplication is not needed as the traffic volumes don't warrant it and it's not the best use of funding. And it says, well, we've been successful in a federal grant. We've tried for years to get this 1.2 million off the federal government to construct it for the Urban Congestion Fund, which has a strict criteria for applying, and now we want to hand the money back and not do anything. Well, what do we wait, 10 or 15 years when our population's multiplied by a large factor with that new urban growth up in Upper Swan, and then we go back and say, oh, we need the money now to build the road that we rejected 10 or 15 years ago. It doesn't make sense, councillors, so please don't support the motion before you and support the officer's recommendation as foreshadowed by Councillor McCulloch. Thank you.
Councillor Henn, Speaker for the motion. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to support this motion, and I'd like to raise a few points that have come up in debate. And one of them is about the mature trees. And although the city will be replacing those trees with new trees, they're not of equal value. They're not of equal value to the environment or to people. A new sapling, a new tree, does not produce the same amount of
oxygen, cooling, aesthetic purpose. It's not like for like. Removing a 30-year-old tree and planting a new growth tree, a small tree, is not equal. We must care for our trees. If we remove all our trees and denude the area along there, which has had so much growth through the urban growth corridor, and we've allowed this, we've allowed the felling of trees right through the city of Swan. And now that area will be prone to great amounts of heat in the future. These trees remain on the road, and I really think we need to consider keeping them. If you drive through other parts of the world and other parts of Australia, you'll find many tree-lined streets and country roads in towns. There's a reason why we have trees alongside roads. They cool the environment, they give us life. Please reconsider removing these trees and do support the community. We are here for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points. The mover said that nobody wants the road. I don't think that's true. It's been demonstrated that there are supporters of the road. The big question is, will this road be dualled all the way through to West Swan Road? Well, in fact, no. If you know anything about the road network that's been planned for the area for many, many, many years, there's a diversion road goes around the top of Edgecombs and connects up further north on West Swan Road, not down at the existing roundabout. So, in fact, that will, when that happens, will reduce the amount of traffic going down to Edgecombs. And by the way, I think it's regrettable that Mr Edgecombe wasn't given a notification that this was happening. It seems that was perhaps outside the capture area for notifications. So the point is that the road network design is to go across the top of Edgecombs, hook up at West Swan Road again, and then to the new roundabout, and then down to Great Northern Highway, which means that the thousands of people that are going into Clementine development are going to need an access point. When that road is dualled all the way, those thousands of people will have a road to be able to get to and from work, or Ellenbrook for that matter. So this is part of the big picture, which unfortunately we're not seeing here. And fortunately, the federal government do see that big picture. They see the fact that we're going to see a lot more development along Upper Swan, and we need to be able to service that, and they're providing funding for it. If we were going to be knocking down Jarrah or Murray trees, I'd be saying, how do we stay away from doing that? We're knocking down London plane trees, which, by the way, are causing us immense problems in Ellenbrook. They're literally ripping up the pavements with their root systems. They're starting to cost us money. So we have problems with those trees because they're not actually a native tree. Just want to make a point about the Swan Valley Planning Act. It's not in the Swan Valley Planning Act. The boundary of the Swan Valley Planning Act is along that road. So you have the Act on the right. It's not impacting in terms of subdivision or land loss or the like, the Swan Valley Planning Act. So as much as we all argued in the 1990s against even Ellenbrook being developed, let alone this, we're going to see a lot more development. We're going to see Upper Swan developed. We're going to see a lot more demand for traffic, by traffic for the roads, and I think we have to take this opportunity to get the federal funding to at least ways to make that road safer for the thousands of extra cars that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other speakers? No. Just for Councillor Scanlon's benefit, we're not removing any 30-year-old trees. The suburb of Averley was only established in 2006. So at best, Averley was only established in 2006. So those trees will be best 15 years old.
Less than 15 years old.
We did say 30, but anyway, any other speakers? Councillor Richardson, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the debate. There's quite a bit of debate that we could go on with here, but considering the history has been in the pipeline that this road is going to end up meeting up for future traffic, large expanses of traffic, we still need to consider that this area and the areas to come are areas of rural amenity that people have bought. Just because there is an increase in traffic doesn't mean that you need to dual carriageway suddenly through an ambient area. That road is travelled by commuters and tourists, and even between the time that the small extension will be completed and the section behind Edgecombe Winery is not finished, people will still bottleneck that section to get through West Swan Road. It shouldn't be used to funnel that excess travel through Swan Valley at the moment, and the traffic should be funneled back to Pennister Parade. The school will be affected by the constant traffic when you put in that dual laneage behind Edgecombe Winery, and also the loss of the trees. If anyone here, and I am a parent at that school, stands on that oval in summer, you will roast. There are no other trees on the oval. They're the only green amenity in that area. It's such a small section of road that will be dualled back to a single road. It's hardly worth the expense at this point in time for City of Swan ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it must be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 8. Motion's lost. Councillor McCalligill moving the officer's recommendation. Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones.
Amendment, Mr Mayor.
You want to move an amendment? All right, I'll hear it.
My amendment, Mr Mayor, is to add $610,000 to the budget to transplant the existing trees.
Move and a seconder. Not accepted. So if you want to move it as a motion, you're going to have to debate it. Okay, you're going to second the amendment? Okay.
Okay.
Question?
How do we know it's costing that amount? Sorry?
In the report.
In the report? Yeah, thank
Page 376.
And I've actually got a question as well, Mr Mayor, before I begin, through you to Mr Coaten. I presume that the transplantation will be to somewhere adjacent to the road, so the trees are in the same, approximately the same location?
Well, the transplantation of the trees isn't proposed. Well,
so I'd need to include that in the amendment as well. Because it could be transplanted anywhere.
There hasn't been any consideration given to where they would go if they were transplanted.
In that case, it needs to be.
I suspend the motion to suspend standing orders to speak.
Well, I think Councillor Johnson better work out his motion before we do anything.
Yeah,
What's your amendment?
A report to come back on where we could put them.
I think it's clear from here that.
Well, Councillor, can you give us whatever your amendment is?
Well, I'll try this one. That's an amendment, Mr Mayor. So add $610,000 to the budget to transplant the trees to a location adjacent to the new road.
Okay, and you got that, Megan?
What about just alongside the new road?
Yeah, that's what it says.
So are you seconding that, Councillor Catalano?
I just wanted to make clear, I mean, adjacent means that they could all be bunched together, and I was thinking that they could be along the new road.
Along's okay.
Yeah, so that we have the similar kind of...
So you're right, seconding that?
Thanks, I'm fine with that then.
Question, Councillor McNamara.
The question is to Mrs. Lay. With regard to 610,000, how much will that add to the rates from the point of view of incoming rates for the next year?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, it's close to 0.5% of rates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Zanella.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question is, the trees are going to be pulled out and destroyed. Couldn't the city actually sell the trees and make a profit from it to developers? Because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of new developments that are looking for mature trees, and I'm sure that they grab the opportunity to go and remove the trees and transplant them somewhere else and pay some money for it.
Mr. Coaten?
We have spoken to some developers about it who weren't interested. Some of the issues are, some of the costs, the value of the tree is equivalent to the actual cost of removing it. There is a lot of cost in terms of preparing the trees to establish the new root system and things like that. So, there's nominally about a 6-month time period to organise that as well. So we have, I can't say what the developers would or would not do, but we have spoken to one of the developers in the area who wasn't interested in it.
Righto. An amendment. There's obviously counsel against it, so Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, in moving this motion, councillors, I'm very conscious that it is going to add to rates, but I'm thinking about the reaction of the students at the Swan Valley Anglican Community School when 61 mostly mature London plane trees are quite close to their school, that many of them will be seeing as they're travelling to school, are simply removed. I think they'll be shocked, dismayed, and they'll be asking the question, how could anyone allow this to happen? So that's the reason for moving this amendment, Mr. Mayor. I want to see the trees retained. I can see there are, from Councillor Zanido's questions, there may be other ways of retaining the trees, but I would suggest that that's for a different amendment. So I'd like to go ahead with this amendment, because I think on behalf of the school children primarily and the entire community, I'm pretty sure are familiar with those trees, will want to keep them retained. And I think if they heard that it was going to cost $10,000 each for a tree that's worth up to $35,000, I think in this day and age they say that's money well spent. So that's the reason for my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kelani.
Thank you. Yes, they're not Marys or Jarrahs, but they are actually living trees, and they are actually serving the same purpose, providing us with cooling, shading, amenity and visual ambience, and providing us with oxygen. They've been there for 15 years. They now belong there. I don't understand why we're talking about transplanting them to another suburb or selling them when actually the submitters to this motion want to retain them. They actually want them left there. So they've thrived there. The trees have lived there. They have a relationship with the people, and the people have a relationship with them. So we take them out carefully, put them to one side, and transplant them along the side of the new dual carriageway. At least we've got a compromise. Now, $10,000 might sound like a lot, but what that tree gives us over the next 15 years, while we're waiting for a young sapling to grow into the same size mature tree, is worth far more than $10,000. And it's going to be increasingly worth far more than $10,000, because, as I've discussed in this chamber many times before, we have reached a critical point in terms of our environmental sustainability, and we need to start looking at maintaining the environmental values that we have. Be it that they're not a native tree, but we can't afford to go knocking down any mature trees for no good reason. They are worth $10,000, because for the next 15 years we're waiting for this sapling to grow, and we have lost far more than that in value, and also just in the goodwill and the relationship that those trees have with the people and the people have with them. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion.
Question,
Councillor Congleton.
Thank you. My question is through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Coaten. Mr. Coaten, could you tell me if you know the survival rate of a transplant of a London plane tree of this age from one location to another?
Coate?
Well, no, I don't. But the reason for, as outlined in the report, you know, the need for a 6-month preparation time, that greatly increases the chance of survival. But certainly, if they're just dug out and transplanted, the survival rate would be extremely low.
Okay. Councillor Goldie, question? Councillor Scan, you got a question?
Thank you so much. Through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Coate, and I'd just like to follow up on that last point he made. I'd just like to ask if that 6-month period is covered in that total cost of $610,000.
Mr Coate?
Well, so I don't quite understand the question.
I'm sorry, I'll repeat it.
What if it's $10,000 a tree, which would require a preparation time of 6 months? So, and 61 trees.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if the cost, that preparation cost, is included in the $610,000.
So if you didn't do the preparation, then the cost would be less. If you just excavated them, dug them up, and moved them straight away, the cost would be less. But the survival would be, you know, would be negligible. So, you know, probably wouldn't be worth. You'd be spending money to move trees for them to die.
Yeah, thank you.
You got a question, Councillor Anderson? Or
I do, thank you, Mayor. Mr Coaten, with these roadworks and duelling, would we be looking at some other tree planting in any case as part of the works?
It is proposed to do other tree planting as part of the roadworks.
So if we planted maybe twice as many trees as we're pulling down, we'd probably just about resolve the problem, would we not?
Yes, you could make that argument, yes.
Councillor Lucas.
I'd like to pass my iPad to Mr Coaten to have a look at a photograph, and I'll try and show the councillors, but between or along the front of the school there is actually 2 avenues of trees, and I think the ones closest to the road may have to be removed for the construction of the road widening, but surely the ones that appear to be another 5 metres back along the property line of the school would not have to be removed? So you'd actually keep a whole avenue of trees, Mr Coaten?
There are some trees that will be saved in the area, so certainly the design has been modified to minimise the amount of removal of trees. So yeah, some trees we always do endeavour to save as many as we can. I can't say specifically which ones. Obviously, the ones where in the road carriageway would go. There will be some nearby the road that we would hope we would be able to save.
Well, the question is, would trees 5 metres back, in fact closer to 8 or 9 metres back from the current roadway, I know that it's going to be extended so it might go another 4 metres, but surely the ones sitting back at 8+ metres would not have to be removed? And I'm happy to pass the photograph up so you can see.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, trees that are off the constructed carriageway, we should be able to retain them.
So, councillors, I'll be speaking against when I get the opportunity.
Okay. Right. Councillor Coley, you wish to speak against the motion.
Councillors, you note that I voted to try and save the trees and keeping them in position, but I think now that the cost is brought out, I think we're better off spending the money on ensuring our rates stay low for the year and taking that same money potentially in the following years and spending it. I think we're going to get a lot more trees out of that same amount of money in different areas and can assure that they will survive. So it's very sad that we're losing these trees, but I think it's prudent that we don't fund the removal of them now, but put the money into trees elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? Councillor Lucas.
Yes. I couldn't sum it up better than Councillor Kiley. I think it's $600,000 that we can save the ratepayers. There's no guarantee, even with a 6-month preparatory arborist intervention, of successfully transplanting the trees. They are beautiful trees, however they're not native. You've heard from a local councillor that or councillor from Swan Valley Gidgegannup that they're actually causing damage to infrastructure. And I firmly believe, based on the map I'm looking at now, that the trees furthest from the roadway, in fact there's more of those, by a fair number. About 12 more of those mature trees closest to the school and closest to the northern side. As I said, there's 2 avenues of trees. One's to the south, closest to the roads, would be removed, and the other trees would remain, in my view. So, and there's obviously trees on the south side, which I think is where the 61 trees come from. And I can't support the motion to spend another $600,000 to try and retain the trees that need to be removed for this road project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Councillor McNamara, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Mr. Courtin. The median strip, I know I've got it here on the map, but I'm not too sure of the actual width of the median strip, the proposed median strip when it's dual. Is it possible to put some of those trees in that median strip?
Yeah, trees that can be remain in the median strip can be retained.
Thank you.
Any further speakers? Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, speaking against the amendment, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, again, it's really good that we're considering and looking at tree retention, and it's something that we're going to have to be doing a lot more of. The costs, we're looking at preparation prior to transplant, but there are also considerable costs post-transplant. And in our climate, our drying climate, plane trees have a very invasive root system, which doesn't benefit us in communities with footpaths, but in making them incredibly difficult, and I have transplanted some larger ones, not this large, make them incredibly difficult and complex to transplant, and therefore then post-transplant there again are costs that haven't been factored in. I think this is a lesson to all of us, and something, again, if we're looking forward to ongoing planning for our city, that may be something that we as a council, and we sit down even at a briefing and look at, is with our future planning for some of the roads that we are looking at developments through some of our growth areas, that we look at where trees are planted so that we don't then come back to this problem again. And where these trees have been planted, maybe there could have been some accommodation. Yes, you know, lines of sight or how they sit according to our eye and aesthetics may have been a bit different, but we come to this moment in time and those trees maybe down the track in another development will be staying exactly where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, any further speakers? No other speakers. Councillor Johnston, your right to reply.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just reading the room here, I think we're going to at least be able to say to the students at Swan Valley Anglican Community School that council did at least consider retaining these trees and did have a debate about it. I think they'll still be very dismayed if they go. But councillors, I still stand by amendment. I actually still think it is the right thing to do. So councillors try to think about what the community will think if these trees are removed. So please vote for my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Put the vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? It's obviously the rest. So motion's lost 11 to 4. Now go back to the officer's recommendation. I have a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone against? Yes, there is. You wish to debate it again? No. Put the vote. Those in favour? 10. Those against? Okay, hang on a second, we'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
We're supposed to be voting or not?
10-5. Motion's carried. Now move to 6.4, proposed 2021-22 differential rates and specific area rates. A motion from Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the proposed motion is that Council resolves to adopt the staff recommendation amended by the inclusion of the following Part 4. 4, to reinstate penalty interest rates at 3% and not to reinstate instalment interest charges for the 2021-2022 period. Record the reason for changing the opposite recommendation is that ratepayers are beginning to emerge from the COVID-19 crisis. Not reinstating instalment interest rates will assist with the instalment repayments to assist in recovery.
Seconder, Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against?
An amendment?
Well, question first, Councillor Coley.
Question, just in terms of, is there a loophole provided in that structure whereby someone could hold off until and do that in instalments and end up paying no interest at all? I'm just wondering if there's a loophole there at all.
Ms. Lay?
Sorry, could you address a question to Ms. Lay? Yeah.
I have. Ms. Lay?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to be entitled to pay on the instalment option, you must make your first payment by the due date. So you can't hold off later than that and not be charged penalty interest.
There you go. Councillor Johnson, you want an amendment?
No, I've got a question.
Question?
Yeah, what instalments are we talking about here? Are we talking the 4 quarterly instalments, or are we talking other instalments arrangements that ratepayers may make?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's the 4 instalment option.
Well, Councillor Henderson's next with a question, I think.
I had an amendment if you've dealt with questions.
I'll take Councillor Broadley's question.
Just so that I'm clear, do people pay penalty interest rates on direct debits?
Ms. Lay?
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I can just clarify the question of Councillor Podolnik, do you mean on a different payment arrangement?
Yeah, for example, if I was to begin to pay my rates via direct debit maybe once a month?
It's penalty interest, Mr Mayor.
Make an amendment then?
Well, Councillor Henderson's first.
Okay, it's to include in the minutes an adjustment to the panel of detail involving the proposed rates in the dollar for gross rental values, UV and specified area rates, to include the some previous years back to 2018-19.
Trying to work out where this is relevant for this motion.
Can we please have that explained
Yeah, I'm trying to work
further?
out where it's relevant to this motion.
Well, in your documents, you've got the proposals for this year only. What I've asked staff to prepare is the previous years of rates so that there is comparison for people to make their submissions on.
Okay, well, it's... Okay.
So,
Right.
just a question. So, just confirming that this is for information only.
Basically, information, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Podolny, you were going to do something?
I guess I just wanted to give people the option to repay, just a bit more options to repay without incurring a penalty rate. So they are paying, and a lot of people pay by direct debit on a regular basis.
And what are you proposing? You've just made a statement.
Oh, sorry. I'm proposing to waive the interest, the 3%, if people are regularly, if in a sense of honouring a regular payment plan. It might not be the 4 instalments, but it's a regular payment plan, potentially monthly or whatever's agreed.
Move in a seconder.
I'd like to ask a question through you, Mr Mayor, to Ms Lay. And or if it comes back to you, Councillor. Are we talking about the instalment arrangements, or are we talking about late payment arrangements?
What I'm talking about is there's an option on the website for people to begin to pay via direct debit, and there's quite a few options to pay for people actually, so I'm just seeing if we can waive those interest fees if people are honouring a repayment plan.
Ms Lay, have you... Yeah.
Mr Mayor, the proposal by Councillor Congerton is to not charge instalment interest on those who are paying by the 4 instalment option.
Yes.
Those who are paying by another payment method where they've entered into an agreed payment plan, which might be by direct debit or it might be coming in and making regular payments, Councillor Congerton's alternate motion does not remove penalty interest.
So your amendment so far is contrary to what Councillor Congdon is proposing.
Asking Councillor Congdon if he would increase the scope of his motion.
Look, I, in consultation through Mr Mayor with Ms Lay, there was an amount that was provided to me at approximately $320,000 that would affect the city by. There haven't been any calculations being made to look at a whole instalment plan across those who pay monthly, bi-monthly or whatever it may be, and that's the reason that I drew the penalty interest rate to not to be reinstated at 3% on those quarterly payments.
Okay. So that is a no? Okay, so in that case you're going to have to come up with an amendment, put the motion and debate it. Question, Councillor McMurray.
Again, just from Ms Lay. And what if people are paying, as Councillor Prodovnik mentioned, with their credit card over a period of time, agreed amount, what is the charge that we are charged as a council by the credit card company? It is not 3%, I believe.
Mr Mayor, I don't have that information to hand.
I suppose that depends on whether you pay your credit card off in time. If you pay your credit card off in time, you don't pay any.
What I mean is from a commercial
Okay.
transaction, if you buy at such at Myer, you're charged probably 1.5% or 0.9% on your card if you pay. So we are charging 3%, which is 300% more.
Through Mr Mayor, no, the 3% is a penalty interest because you haven't paid by the formal due dates, and we don't charge any type of admin fee because you pay by a credit card.
I just want to clarify one thing, Mr Mayor. I think what Councillor Prodovnik is saying is that if somebody makes a deal with the city that they want to pay their rates over a period of 12 months or 12 payments or even 10 payments, whatever, so as they'll be paid within the financial year, that are you telling us that there is no interest, to be no penalty interest on that?
No, Mr Mayor, I'm saying there is penalty interest on that arrangement.
Mr Mayor, in terms of payment arrangement, that means they're already in arrears, is that right?
Ms Lay?
Mr Mayor, payment arrangement means they have a regular type of payment plan, but it's not in full or the forced instalment option. It's something else.
I guess because we offer those options, I don't think it's unreasonable to maybe consider it. But I wanted to ask you through you, Mr Mayor, if this is something that potentially we could park for now and then discuss as part of our policy, because I know we've got a rates policy that will come before council, and potentially that's the time to discuss that option. Do you think so?
Well,
I want to second the amendment, Mr Mayor.
Oh,
I'm seconding it.
The proposed differential rates to go to advertising at some point, you would need to include that in it.
And also, Mr Mayor, as part of budget adoption, you need to specify if you're charging interest.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that I need to debate it now, is that right?
Well, you need to formulate an amendment, a properly formulated amendment, and then we'll trash it out.
And can I just ask one question? If this amendment fails, this can still be discussed next month as part of a broader policy, is that correct? Because we're not discussing this particular issue, we're going broader with the rates policy, is that correct?
Ms Lay?
Mr Mayor, the rates policy is about debt collection and the process is undertaken.
But it still will include hardship provisions and a whole raft of potential options that we could offer, I would like to think.
Mr Mayor, we have a separate policy or guideline for financial hardship.
If I'm hearing this clearly, are we divorcing the two? So we've got a rates policy and a financial hardship policy that are two very separate things. Is that how this is being looked at?
Through you, Mr Mayor, from memory, the council resolution is to develop a rates debt collection policy, and it's very separate to the financial hardship guidelines.
I raised that motion.
So, Councillor Broderick, can you just read the motion?
I want to hear this because I raised that motion and it was very clear in my mind that that should be covered as part of a policy, because we don't have a policy that encompasses, and I wanted it to be broader. So I'm happy to have this discussion off the floor, but I just wanted to put that on the record.
Okay, so you're moving this motion?
Okay, well, I would like to propose that people who have entered into a payment plan and have embraced many of the options that they have at their disposal are given the opportunity to have that.
Is that what that says?
Okay, is that what you want up there?
Yeah.
That's what you want. Right, seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson. Those against? Wish to debate it?
Yes.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Right, Councillor Broderick, let's go.
I'll keep it simple. It's just another opportunity for people to pay. If our aim is to encourage people to regularly pay, I think that this is just another way of giving them support. And if we're going to waive 3% for people who are paying in full or paying in instalments, it's just treating people more equally.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I just call a point of order, please? I'm a bit concerned, he said, when people are paying their rates in full no, this is not for payments, anything to do with payments made in full.
Well, it is, because
no,
if
it's
you
not.
pay in full, you don't pay
no,
3% interest.
Okay, well, you finish. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I think that all ratepayers who are paying by instalments should be treated equally. So if we are going to say that penalty interest is not going to apply to those ratepayers who decide to pay by the four quarterly instalments, well, it's not actually quarterlies, it's 4 instalments mentioned on the rates notice, then that same concept of not reinstating penalty interest for ratepayers who pay monthly by direct debit, or who pay monthly by direct deposit, or pay fortnightly by direct deposit or fortnightly by direct debit should also apply. I think it's a reasonable thing. I think many people would like to pay their rates by instalment, but 4 quarters isn't, well, it's not even 4 quarters. If you've ever checked your rates notice, it's actually 4 payments. It's not that convenient. So I think probably, I know that it's only a few ratepayers actually take up the monthly or fortnightly or even quarterly direct debit option, but they should be treated just the same way. So if I think we need to make those different payment plans more available. They should be placed on the rates notice. And if we are not reinstating penalty interest for the 4 instalments, then we should not reinstate penalty interest for people paying monthly or fortnightly or by any other arrangement. I think this would be a great way to go. So that's why I'm very pleased by this amendment. Thank you.
Speaker against the amendment, Councillor Goley.
Yeah, that's the reason I'm against it, because it's actually, you are treating people differently. They still have the option, if they wanted to put it in instalments, to do that, but if they fall outside of that, they get equitable treatment in 3% interest charge. If we don't have an interest charge, as Councillor Congdon has put in there, people will not pay their rates until the last minute, potentially then, and maybe not even then, because they don't have to. There's no interest charge. There's no incentive for people to put it in. If you do that for people who are on a plan, have no interest, but have an interest for people who are late and don't get on a plan, then you're treating them differently. It's inequitable treatment of ratepayers.
Any other speakers? Another question.
Again, it's for Ms. Lay. And when people make arrangements to pay quarterly, as it's allowed, the actual 9th month is the final payment, the final quarter. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's March.
So, Mr. Mayor, the follow-up question after that is that I'd like to actually, after this is defeated, if it's defeated, to have another amendment, to have another.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I personally don't support the amendment because I see it in direct contrast and direct contradiction. Councillor Congdon's motion is to reinstate penalty interest rate at 3% and not reinstate instalment interest rate charged for 21-22. And the amendment is waive interest rates if ratepayers are on an agreement. I think there's two separate issues here, and I don't like making these financial budget considerations on the run. I'd much prefer that this item, the amendment, be defeated. We can go to the finance team, find out what the implications are to the budget and what effect it is. And personally, I believe if someone is making consistent payments, whether it suits them to do it fortnightly or monthly, but they are making and they pay off their full rates over that 12 months period, no, I don't think they should be penalised either by more interest rate. But I think we need to get more information and facts to come back and have a proper debate about it, rather than trying to add it into another motion which I believe is completely contrary to the amendment. Thank you.
Speaking or? Okay. Speakers for or against the motion, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. I don't see that there's any contradiction actually, because what we've got in the original motion is we've got people who don't pay by the instalment plan and people who do pay by instalment plan. And the original motion is that for people who pay by the instalment plan, there's no penalty or interest. But for people who don't pay, there's 3% interest, two categories. But what this amendment is suggesting is that we've actually got like another category, which is a subset of those people who actually don't pay by instalment plan. And that's divided into those people who don't make any arrangements at all, any kind of arrangements to pay, and those people that do. Now, there is an incentive for those people that do make an arrangement, either to pay by direct debit or whatever other means are available to them. And we should be making it easy for people to make these payments, because that's what we want. We want the payments made. So those people should be given the same kind of incentive as the people who go on the instalment plan. They're paying their rates according to a plan. One's paying it by an instalment plan and another one's paying it by some other plan that's been agreed to. So those two groups of people are actually being incentivised to actually pay their rates on time according to the plan. So that leaves you with the final set of people who aren't making any arrangements at all, either instalment plan or any other kind of plan. And it is those people who the 3% penalty should apply to, because they do need the incentive to pay their rates. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I think we've covered that. So I'll call time. You got a right to reply, Councillor Budovnik?
Honestly, I would have said the same thing. I've had notes, so thank you, Jennifer.
Okay. Put it to the motion to the vote. Those in favour? The amendment, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against is 8. The motion is lost. Go back to Councillor Congress, mate. I have a mover and a seconder. Anyone against? A further amendment. Okay, let's hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree totally with this particular motion, except that when it says maybe the wording might be different, but what I wanted to achieve is that those people who still owe rates on the 9th month, right, will be charged 3% per annum, calculated daily.
Just a quick question. Speaker's comment. Obviously on the amount that's left outstanding. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, thanks.
Ms Lay, that already happens, doesn't it?
No, Mr Mayor, through you, that's penalty interest,
Yeah.
and that's charged from the first instalment date if you haven't paid in full or paid the first instalment.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, my motion is that on the 9th month, if there is rates due to the City of Swan by a ratepayer, that ratepayer will be penalised at 3% per annum, calculated daily.
I think, Councillor, you're actually trying to move something that already exists, because Councillor Lay is saying Ms Lay is saying if you get to the 9th month and you haven't paid, you are in arrears and you get the penalty applied for the whole lot.
Explain if you. I am not talking about what Ms Lay said, that it's charged from the 1st of the July of the financial year. That's what Ms Lay said. And the amount that's due on that date is now penalised for 3%. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the amount of the penalty interest will come into play from the first instalment date, which is roughly, usually the end of August. But just to clarify, if Councillor McNamara, does he mean a ratepayer has selected to go on the instalment plan but defaults on the fourth and final payment? Is that your question?
That is part of the question, because that is just part of the ratepayer situation. But as Councillor Catalana said, lots of people don't bother paying, right? And some people pay half, some people pay whatever. But I don't believe people should be charged interest from the first of from the financial year. They should be charged interest on what they actually owe.
I've just got a question, just so that I understand this. Through you, Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question?
Mr Mayor, Ms Lay is trying to actually answer the question. So, Ms Lay?
Can we repeat the question, Mr Mayor? It's getting rather confused. Can Councillor McNamara repeat the question?
Can you just... do you remember your question?
Simply, I would like to see any money due to the City of Swan by rates charged at 3% if it's not paid on the 9th month.
He's saying 3 months, 9 months interest free. That's what he's saying.
What I'm saying is not necessarily 9 months interest free. I'm saying is the balance that is due to the City of Swan on the 9th month is now subject to a 3% interest payment.
But it's charged daily. So what's your motion saying? Are you saying stop the charges for 9 months and then slug them? Is that what you're saying?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. I'm going to say this again. I'm sorry if you don't understand me. It's not my fault if you don't understand. So my situation is, if we're owed money for rates, then the amount that we're owed, irrespective of whether it's the first month or the 9th month, but I'm saying the 9th month because we have an arrangement for 4 quarters in place already, right? If people default or if they don't pay at all, on the 9th month, they're entitled to be charged at 3% to be 3% interest on a daily basis, calculated on a daily basis, but that's the annual fee. That's the annual figure.
So, Councillor, just so I get it clear, is this what you're proposing? Ratepayer pays his first instalment on time, pays his second instalment on time, pays his third instalment on time, defaults or pays the fourth one late and pays the 3% on the late payment. Is that what you're saying? The last one that he hasn't paid on time.
Let's debate it, because otherwise I'll be going
Oh, jeez. Okay, so that's what you're saying. Okay, do I have a seconder for that amendment? No, if lapses. Okay, now we'll go back to Councillor Congdon's mate. I have a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone against?
I move the motion be put.
all you have to do is not say anything and they're going to get put.
I am against it, but I've already said why I'm against it, so I don't need to debate it. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
Did you have a seconder, sorry? Was there a seconder?
Yeah, we've got to move in a second. All I'm waiting now is to move on with the vote. Thank you, councillors. Okay, now, those in favour? Those against is 2. Motion is carried. Can we move on to item 7.1, Code of Conduct, Councillors, Committee Members and Candidates Policy. Require an absolute majority in this one, councillors, and a proposed motion from Councillor Catalano.
Thank you, everyone. I acknowledge that this issue was discussed in chambers in a very congenial meeting. However, there were probably half of the councillors that weren't present at that meeting. So I have actually put forward this alternative motion to give those councillors another chance to reconsider what I'm putting forward, but also for other councillors to also hear the debate on it, if there's going to be one. I mean, the Code of Conduct is important because it regulates us, the councillors, as the elected representatives of residents or ratepayers of the City of Swan. So my first... Oh, sorry, did I have to... I'm doing a debate.
You do have to actually move the motion, councillor.
Thank you.
You were going to spend all your bullets before you got to debate.
You should have pulled me up. Sorry about that. You should have pulled me up.
I just wanted to see how far you're going to go. You've told us everything you're going to debate now.
Sorry. Well, I've got more to go, actually. Shall I just go to the motion? Thank you very much. Proposed motion that this council resolve to 1, adopt the City of Swan Code of Conduct for councillors, committee members and candidates, subject to the following changes. A. Removal of clauses 8.1d must avoid damage to the reputation of the city, and B and 8.1e must ensure any comment on a council decision must be respectful of that decision. So the rest of the staff recommendations are the same. And I think I've gone into my reasons, so
okay.
That's fine.
Now I just need to wait. I've got a seconder. Motion lapses. Move the officer's recommendation. Moved by Councillor Conkerton, seconded by Councillor Parry. Anyone against?
Mr Mayor, I got an amendment, which is in the order paper. Substantive motion.
Well, now you're going to make that amendment to the standing motion.
Yep, that's right.
To the officer's recommendation. Okay, thanks for
so
pointing
my,
that out, Mr. CEO. Hang on a second.
Shall I go?
Yep, read it.
Okay. My proposed amendment is to insert the following addition to Section 8, Personal Integrity Clause 1. A councillor, committee member or candidate must identify themselves as a councillor, committee member or candidate when speaking at any public meeting within the City of Swan on any matter relating to the local government.
Seconder, Councillor Lucas. Is there anyone against?
I've got a question, Mr Mayor.
Question?
How could you enforce that?
Councillor.
That's a real good question. How can you enforce that?
Because if there's someone present who can identify a councillor making a statement without identifying them, then that's the point when the Division 3 Code of Conduct complaint can be made. If nobody notices it, then it's not enforced. But if somebody does, it's the same with all complaints. With all Code of Conduct breaches, someone has to observe it, and this falls into the same category. It has to be observed.
Okay. Further question, Councillor Parry?
I'm against it, Mr Mayor.
Okay. You want to debate it?
Why not?
Okay. Come on, Councillor.
It's an absolutely fascinating one. I'll just address that one point. It's absolutely fascinating. Look, councillors, we've now got two divisions in our Code of Conduct. We've got Division 3 and Division 4. So Division 4 is pretty much the same as it was before. Division 3 means that there are integrity and other requirements of councillors when speaking in public which are intended to improve the general, I won't use the word that's used in there, improve the general tone and demeanour of debate and commentary. And the reason and all of those are subject to the same necessity that if a breach occurs, somebody has to identify it. It's actually that simple. Breaches occur all the time that nobody complains about because either nobody's noticed it, nobody was there to notice it, who understood the rules of conduct, or the person who did notice it thinks it's too trivial and just can't be bothered, or is the sort of person that doesn't like making complaints. Someone like myself, for instance, I don't like making complaints. I said, as you know, Council, I don't like making complaints. I just think complaining is a bad thing, especially when you're complaining about me. So this in addressing Councillor Perry's comment, this rule is exactly the same as any other rule. And the benefit of this rule, this Division 3 rule, is that it would be possible for a councillor to get up in a public meeting and say something not especially pleasant about the city or other councils or whatever, and to be able to do it without any comeback. So this is about a councillor speaking in a public meeting about a City of Swan matter, getting up and saying, instead of making their speech incognito, they begin by saying, "Hi, I'm Ian Johnson, I'm a councillor of the City of Swan," and then they carry on. So it's that simple. I think it's reasonable, it's what you'd expect, but it doesn't always happen. So I want to make sure it does happen. Thank you.
Councillor Lucas.
Yes, thank you. The reason I supported this motion, mainly because it includes a candidate for a local government election, and I'd dislike for a candidate, unbeknown to other people at a meeting, to start saying things and not declaring that they're a candidate for the forthcoming election. And I don't see any issue. If I go to any public meeting and I get asked to speak or make a comment on stuff, I'm proud to represent myself and identify myself as the City of Swan councillor for the Eltone ward. So I don't see any adverse impact, and to clarify that, I did ask our governance officer this afternoon, and she endorsed the amendment, so I've got no issues with it. Thank you.
Councillor Congleton.
Sorry to labour the questions, Mr Mayor, but I'm just a little interested to know the candidate, prospective candidate, nominated candidate, because there are lots of candidates out there without saying they're a candidate.
This would be a question for our Governance Office. I'm pretty sure the word candidate is used in the rest of the Division 3 in the same way. So I'm not putting anything here that's different to the rest of Division 3. So candidates are mentioned throughout Division 3.
Well, I guess my question wasn't through to you, Councillor. My question is to the... Would you be able, Ms Albrecht, were you about to answer that?
Ms Albrecht?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So a candidate is defined in the Code of Conduct as a candidate for the election as a councillor, for election as a councillor. In practical terms, that would have to be after a candidate has nominated for council. Also, the Code of Conduct applies to breaches of the code that have occurred within 1 month. So again, in practical terms, it would have to have occurred within 1 month of the election, because the code only applies to candidates once they are elected. So it would be the 1 month leading up to the election that the candidate would need to follow these rules.
Second question to you, Mr Mayor. How is the candidate going to know that they have to do this at a public meeting?
Ms Albright.
Through you, Mr Mayor. When candidates nominate for council, we will provide them with a copy of the Code of Conduct.
Thank you. Councillor. Councillor, do you have a question, or you were going to speak? Councillor Henderson.
Another question. So if those candidates are not sworn, how can this be applied?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the Code of Conduct only applies to candidates once they are elected to council. So if a candidate runs for council and is not elected, any breach that has occurred while they've been a candidate, this code does not apply to them. It only applies at the point that they are elected to council. It does cover behaviour or conduct in the lead up to the election, but a complaint cannot be made of a breach of the Code of Conduct until they are elected to council.
Right, okay. Councillor Parry, you wish to speak against the
I'll
motion.
be very quick. So, by the Oxford Dictionary, a meeting is a situation where two or more people meet by chance or by agreement. Okay. So, any matter relating to local government, geez, those bins are full of kingfish. I wish someone hi, I'm Bryce Parry, I'm your local councillor for Balladrew. How may I help you? Or when someone says, geez, parking's a bit of an issue, I'm sorry about that, but, you know, these are meetings all the way through. They're public meetings. No matter who you are, you're meeting people all the time. And by introducing yourself all the time, I have no issue with that, but I just don't think it's enforceable. How could you enforce this? It just makes no sense. So I can't vote against it.
Okay, any speakers for or against the motion? No other speakers? Councillor Johnston, can you close? Councillor McNamara, you got a question? Well, I'll just ask Councillor Johnston to close the debate. So,
from Mr. Councillor Johnson, please, and that is that his motion, his proposed amendment, is for Councillor Catalana's motion, which was already defeated. So, what are we debating?
yeah, he had the motion there, so I've allowed him to move it separately. So, and then I move the officer's recommendation, move the amendment to the officer's recommendation. So, close it up, Councillor.
Look, if we're having to explain what the word meeting is, I think we're in deep trouble. Look, a meeting is something that's happening now. It could happen in a church hall. It could happen. I don't need to explain that. Look, if somebody does not identify themselves, is a candidate. You've seen their nomination paper because it's pinned up in the admin building, and they fail to identify themselves as a candidate, then it applies. And if somebody notices that, and only if somebody notices that, then they can make a complaint under Division 3. So this business of what a candidate is, councillor, all the way through Division 3. Personal integrity, a councillor, committee member or candidate. 9, relationships with others, councillor, committee member or candidate. 10, councillor, committee. This is just another additional item. It's been inserted into 8 under personal integrity. So if you are a councillor, or you're a committee member, or you're a candidate, and a candidate is defined by someone who was nominated, and you can see their name pinned up, you can see it on the website after they've nominated, then you fail to identify yourself, then you're in breach. It's that simple. That's how it's enforced. If you notice that there's a councillor or a candidate who's not explained who they are, then you're in breach. It's that simple. If somebody wants to complain, they can. That's how Division 3 works. So I'd recommend you read it, councillor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, councillors. That was really uncalled for, councillor. So those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 10. Motion's lost. Now we go back to the substantive motion. A mover and a seconder. Now against?
Yes, I am against.
And do you wish to
I am
debate?
against it. I do, actually. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Congerton.
Mr Mayor, I'm not going to discuss it, although I have to close, I will, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Parry, you the seconder? No?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to... The main reason why I'm objecting is that I think 8.1d, the provision that we councillors must avoid damage to the reputation of the city. I think this can be used, and actually I have experienced it being used to stifle councillors speaking freely about issues that bother them and their constituents. I think that unfortunately, this provision is used to stifle constructive criticism on the performance of the city and council, because any kind of criticism is taken to be criticism that damages the reputation. And it's really not clear enough in this particular provision what we're talking about in terms of damage to the reputation of the city, because it can be actually very subjectively construed. Oh, you've said something that is negative about the city in its provision of services. Oh, therefore, you're damaging the reputation of the city. And yet that criticism can be very constructive, actually, because it can be brought to the attention of staff and council that there needs to be an improvement in the performance of the city, which will actually thereby enhance the city's reputation. So, unfortunately, that's my issue with 8.1d, is that it's just not defined enough as to what this conduct is that can cause damage to the reputation of the city. And it appears that there is, from my experience, a kind of a belief that that involves any kind of criticism of the city or of council, which actually stifles a constructive debate and also stifles improvements that actually could enhance the reputation of the city. And I also have an issue with the clause 8.1e.
Councillor, I'm actually going to call to order on that, because your previous amendment, we already dealt with those, and council
No, we
moved.
didn't.
Yeah, we did. You moved a previous amendment. Right?
Yeah, but I
And
hadn't spoken about it.
Wait, give me a minute. We already voted on not to remove those clauses. Now you're debating that that's the issue with the staff recommendation. So in effect, council's already ruled on those two items. So we're now moving the entire officer's recommendation.
Well,
so we're actually rehashing.
But I have an objection to it, and I want to raise it.
Well, I'm actually saying that it's my view that we've already dealt with these two issues that you're trying to debate on the officer's recommendation and been dealt with. So therefore, they are in fact out of order in this
it might
context.
be. See, this is the same kind of thing that I'm referring to. It might actually be helpful to councillors in the room to actually hear me speak on this.
Councillor, you've already actually debated both these
I
two.
didn't debate it at all, in fact. I did not get to debate it.
Well,
that's the point I'm making. And what I'm trying to say is that...
Councillor already made a decision, Councillor. So
well, it still gives me the opportunity to have my say and objection.
I'll cut you some slack because I don't believe it. I'll give you another minute to wrap it up.
Okay, and so it should also be open for councillors for the similar reason to provide constructive criticism of council decisions for the same reason that just because you don't agree as an individual councillor with a decision made by council, it doesn't actually make that decision any less valid. But what it does is it raises that there's still an issue that can't be swept under the carpet, that will have to be dealt with later on, because the councillor has a genuine interest in trying to promote that particular issue on behalf of their ratepayers, and they should be able to make that that issue known and also to bring that criticism to council for the same reason that I just made, which is that ultimately the problem will be solved and the reputation of the city and the decision may be changed, but it will be a better decision in the future. So I just want to finally say that the whole thing about our city is that we pride ourselves on diversity, a diversity of people, a diversity of places. That means a diversity of views, and that includes councillors who are representing this diverse community on council. We're not all going to share the same view, and we should be able to go out and be honest and transparent and actually be honest about our views.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, speaker against the motion. Question, Councillor McNamara.
This is to the CEO. With regard to decisions on council, and you have total respect at the end of the day for the actual decisions, even though you were defeated 10-2 or 5-1 or whatever. Okay? Now, you totally respect the decision, which your partner, you're complying with the codes of conduct. But somebody asks you outside, what happened? And you say, well, you're already after debating it in public, on streaming, right? Your reasons why you don't agree with the decision. Because, not the actual decision, but the actual, right. Now, the question is, because you don't agree with the actual decision, does it mean that you don't respect it? Or can you actually tell folks outside and the ratepayers, the decision was this, but I disagreed with it? Is that being disrespectful because you disagree? That's the question.
And it is a question.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I mean, the councillors must respect and abide the decision of the collective group of the council and the decision that was made.
That is correct. Absolutely, and that's what I said at the outset. Yes, you have to respect whatever decision, whether you're defeated or whether you win a debate, whatever.
Yes. The question?
The question is, even though you do respect that, have you got the right as an individual that you, because you have already debated your reasons why in public on the screen, and you're asked outside, have you got the reason to, have you got the right to tell the people, I disagree with it, even though I do respect the decision. That's the end of the matter, end of story, but I disagree with what happened.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I mean, my advice would be is that you wouldn't speak adversely. Your commentary to that would be, to the ratepayer, is that you know the way that I voted on that council decision, and I respect the decision that's been made by the council. And I would leave it at that. That would be my advice to any councillor.
That's the end of my questions. Thank you. Right.
I've got a question, Mr Mayor, at this point. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the staff. I just would like to, or through to our governance officer, may I ask you, 8.1d and 8.1e, are these part of the model code of conduct, or have they been added in by the city?
Is that right?
Through you, Mr Mayor, these are additions to the Code of Conduct that were workshopped with councillors at a briefing. They are not part of the model Code of Conduct.
Thank you. Yeah, we've already dealt with those. Okay, any further speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson speaking.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm going to speak against this simply because I think these two items, 8.1d and E, identified by Councillor Catalano, are too broad in scope. And I don't think I've had sufficient analysis to determine how it might impact councillors. Must avoid damage to the reputation of the city. Well, but E must ensure any comment on a council decision must be respectful of that decision. Well, we've just heard it. Almost sounds like it's a gag. All you can do is say, well, you heard what I said in the meeting, and I support the decision. Well, I think I'm still entitled to explain what I said in the meeting, my point of view. And when I do that, I usually finish up by saying, but council's made its decision. You know, that's the decision of council, and that's how it's going forward. But it appears that E would probably stop councillors from doing that. So that would be my concern. So I can't support the code of conduct. I do realise we have to support the model code of conduct at a minimum, but I'm going to vote against it because I don't agree with D and E. They're too broad, and I think they're damaging to democracy. Thank you.
Okay. The question will be asked, how come Councillor Catalano's motion failed for lack of seconder? Any other speakers for or against the motion? Speaking for?
Actually,
against?
I'd like to move an amendment if it's possible. I'd like to move an amendment that we remove just 8E. Is that the correct term? So hold on. Excuse
Sorry,
me.
Councillor, we've already dealt with that.
Oh, but it was dealt with another item concurrently.
I
It
can't
wasn't
accept-
dealt
I can't accept it,
individually.
Councillor. It was already dealt with, part of the previous, and it failed for lack of a second. So,
Mr. Mayor, I can answer your question that you answered earlier. I wouldn't mind answering it if you
well,
can.
hang on. Just turn your microphone. I'm dealing with Councillor Scanlon. I'm not going to accept that amendment, Councillor Scanlon. That's it. So,
Can I answer the question you asked earlier, Mr. Mayor? You asked why was there no seconder. There was a similar to Councillor Catalano's
I
motion.
didn't actually
if
ask,
I
intend
agree.
an answer, Councillor. So,
Well, the answer is this. I was wanting to move an amendment to it, so I couldn't
all
second
right.
it.
Well, good. We've done it. Okay. Are any speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Congdon, you want to close?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There would be these two issues that have been raised about avoiding damage and reputation to the city, and probably more importantly seems to be the one about the being respectful of a decision. Since my reappointment to council, there has been a
Point of order there, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Congleton wasn't appointed to council.
election.
He was voted in.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor.
My election
Carry
to
on,
council.
Councillor Congdon.
Thank you. Since my election to council, across this chamber, there's been references to 69, 69, 69, 69, and if we want to step outside of this chamber, the Barley Nine, the Barley Nine, and the Barley Nine. You may smirk,
Point of order,
councillor.
please.
No, no,
Point
I'm
of order.
talking about
I've got a point of
being
order.
respectful.
Councillors, well,
Point
I
of
don't think it's a
order.
point of order because Councillor Congdon
No,
is
I actually have a point of
quoting
order on
factual
this,
comments.
because it's no good alleging that another person or another group of people are constantly saying 6-9 when in fact you repeat it half a dozen, if not more times, to them. I mean, if you can't
Councillor,
you
he
can't
was-
use that example against people
Well,
that you're accusing
I
of.
can use
Councillors, just one
6-9,
moment, please.
thank you.
Councillor Catalano, Councillor Kylie was quoting, Councillor Congdon, my apologies, was quoting actual factual stuff that pops up on social media constantly. So I don't
It's
think
beyond
you've got
my
a point of
control. That's not in my.
No,
I don't
well, how
do
about
it.
we let's see where Councillor wants to go with that, because all he does so far is quoted facts.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I just ruled there's no point of order. So, Councillor Congdon, if you can continue, please.
Order, Mr. Mayor.
I think Mr. Mayor.
What do you think you've got, Councillor?
My point of order is this. I don't know that much about who the Barley Nine were, but they're either murderers or drug addicts or something. And you're suggesting that somehow implying that certain councillors are falling into that category is definitely not something that should be said in this chamber. So I think the Barley Nine statement needs to be
I don't
withdrawn.
think Councillor Congdon's actually said you did it yet. So
he's inferred that something to do with this council. So it needs to be withdrawn, needs to be an apology, I think.
Well, I'm not convinced that there's a one there. So, Councillor Congdon, carry on. Councillors, carry on, Councillor Congdon.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is actually quite a serious matter. Could you please explain, or could Councillor Congdon please explain who are the Barley Nine and why they're relevant to this council chamber? And who are you singling out as being similar to or members of the Barley Nine in this chamber?
This is not singling out a member in this chamber. This is referencing, I said, to social media comment. That's what I said. If you'd listened correctly, and you're always picking me up on listening, Councillor, I said social media comment of the Barley Nine, and these comments are generally raised after council meetings when the voting has gone 6-9. So if I'm allowed to continue, Mr. Mayor.
Carry on, Councillor.
What I'm hoping by the new code of conduct that has been presented is that the respectful decisions are adhered to by all members in this room. And we don't have reoccurrences of allegations that may be in social media that there is this, we are against one group of councillors or one councillor against the other group of councillors when we make decisions here in a democratic process. So that's why I'm happy that the retention of the council decision is made respectful and is adhered to as being respectful. And as for the damage and reputation of the city, Mr Mayor, it's important that our city is seen to be reputable and not disreputable. And there's been a lot of commentary over the past about the City of Swan. And I would like to see that the integrity of the group, the respectfulness of the group and the city be retained of having a great reputation along with its staff. And that's why I'm endorsing this code of conduct.
Thank you, Councillor. Now move the motion. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Unanimous officer's recommendation.
I'm supporting Councillor Conlon.
Okay. Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Okay, now that takes us to, councillors, to Part C, and the first motion there is C1.1, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. My motion is that Council resolve to 1. No longer stock the council bar with alcoholic beverages. 2. Clarify that the provision of alcoholic beverages for staff and councillors, that should read, and councillors, shall be limited to sanctioned social functions, for example, the end-of-year function, and within the parameters as per the hospitality and entertainment guideline. And I should also put...
just read your reason. Thanks, Councillor.
Well, it's not just end-of-year functions, but other City of Swan functions.
Well, that's not what you got there, but carry on. Read your reasoning, please.
Okay, so can I just have that change in there, please? So the end-of-year function and other City of Swan functions. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Reason?
Reason, feedback from City of Swan ratepayers indicates that some object to rates being spent on alcohol. Council needs to ensure the responsible use of its resources. Some expenditure on hospitality, including the provision of alcoholic beverages, is appropriate from time to time, for example, civic and public functions. However, the council bar is not considered to meet what is considered appropriate expenditure of ratepayer funds.
Seconder? Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? There is, and you wish to debate it. Councillor Catalano, get over the debate.
Thanks very much. Now, as I've said, no alcohol in the councillor bar, and I presume the same goes for staff premises. Residents have asked me to move this motion, as I've said. I have actually used the bar and I have imbibed alcohol in the bar after City of Swan functions, but I no longer do it, as I don't think it's appropriate for alcohol to be provided in the bar for the following reasons. Alcohol paid by ratepayers shouldn't be provided to council or staff in the course of fulfilling their duties. Alcohol reduces inhibitions, and let's call it out. It can make people more emotional, more silly, more loud. It can make people more aggressive, which may be out of character for them and not a true reflection of a person's state of mind. That's a general statement. Councillors shouldn't drink alcohol before council meetings, as they should be sober, and the expectation of residents and ratepayers is that councils attend meetings in a sober state because the issues that are coming before them affect real people, their lives, and need careful and sober consideration. So that's serving alcohol or having alcohol in the bar and imbibing it before council meetings. Alcohol shouldn't be a necessity to enhance discussion and debate either before, during or after council meetings, as for the reasons that I've outlined above, in that it reduces people's inhibitions, doesn't necessarily provide a true state of that person's state of mind when they're in a sober state, when they should be making such decisions or having those discussions. And in fact, my experience in this chamber is that the best discussions and debate have been had in this council chamber here with all the sobriety and seriousness that are before them and the issues that those issues dictate. And those discussions are held. The ones I'm particularly thinking of that we've had in this chamber, off camera. We've had some very frank and open discussions, and it gave actually the councillors the opportunity to explore a middle ground where solutions for what are at first appear to be diverse views or very extremely diverse views, it gives the opportunity for an exploration of the middle ground and for problem solving. And alcohol does not need to be a part of that because it can inhibit that tendency towards emotions or emotional response away from rational thinking and speaking. So I believe that this council is better off exploring and searching for the middle ground so that we don't have a division on council, and that's what I'm proposing as part of this motion, in fact. So, secondly, alcohol shouldn't be paid for ratepayers provided to councillor staff as a means of unwinding down after council meetings either. I mean, like anyone else who has finished their work, it's up to them whether they want to go to the pub and buy their own drinks, but that's what people do. In any workplace, they go to the pub, they buy their own drinks. Or perhaps there's an opportunity to explore bringing your own into some other space, but you pay for your own drinks for unwinding. That's part of your own personal preference. Ratepayer funds can be better spent elsewhere. And finally, I just want to raise the fact that the old traditional order of entitlement, that councillors somehow have an entitlement, that, we're sort of, the sort of Westminster system and we're all in,
30 seconds left, Councillor.
Yes, that we're all in some British Parliament or something and we're all going to go at the back and have a drink and, drink port. We've got to move on with the times. It's not acceptable. These aren't the kind of community expectations. And finally, alcohol should not be used as a fringe benefit for councillors in the performance of their role. So alcohol is no substitute for performance, pay for performance.
Thank you, Councillor. That's your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kyle is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to reserve my judgment on this issue. I am in two minds about it because I appreciate that cultural norms change over the many years, and there's probably going to be a time when alcohol is going to be treated the same as cigarettes to some extent, and that's occurring in the day-to-day in our lives anyway. We certainly don't drink and drive and the like anymore, so I'm in two minds about this. I don't really drink much at all and maybe rarely have a drink in the bar, but I do appreciate other people's right to do that. So in the future we'll have service stations without petrol, we'll have butchers with no meat. This is how things change, so I'm just going to wait until the debate and then... but I do appreciate it does serve a purpose, but I'll just listen to the debate. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. Councillor Congleton.
Thanks. Mr Mayor, lots of things were said just a moment ago by Councillor Catalano, and a lot of the references would appear to be about alcohol consumption and judgment. and there was a lot of commentary in relation to alcohol consumption before the meeting that could relate. There was commentary about alcohol consumption before the meeting.
Where was that?
In Jennifer's speech.
Jennifer,
yeah.
sorry, Councillor Catalano's
She made
commentary.
comment. Carry on, Councillor Congdon.
And I would agree totally. I do not drink before a meeting. I don't drink before any of my board meetings externally at all. And I would not expect anyone else to do the same. So without calling out the people in the room that do or did or otherwise, it's irrelevant, but perhaps it should stop. Does it give you a division of council if you have alcohol prior to a meeting? I don't think so. Does it give you a division of council if you go to the bar and have a beer at the end of the night or a glass of wine? I don't think so. Let's go to the pub after the meeting. We'll be finished at 10 and then we'll have another adjournment to another meeting on Tuesday. I don't know that there's one particular pub that might be open at 10 o'clock if I leave this chamber to go and have a beer by my solitary self. If that was the case, I'd rather go home and have a beer with my wife, except she doesn't drink beer. The assumption is bring your own, BYO, bring your own in a bag and put it in the fridge. And I mentioned to a councillor the other day who said, I'd like to bring my own because he didn't like the wine that was here. Very strange for the council actually enjoyed the wine he was drinking. However, and my commentary was, okay, where are you going to put your wine, in which fridge? Because if you're going to do that, perhaps you don't need a fridge for your wine. And if you're going to put ice in anything, should you be using the ice from the bar to put into the drink? For much the same thing, maybe BYO your own ice. Is it a paid performance, was another comment that was made. Is it part of the stipendiary provided by the government to add, and is it a fringe benefit? Well, I think there's a fringe benefit component on the bar stock anyway, and that's entirely up to what the officers do in that calculation through this accounting structure for the various rules. And might I say, Councillor Kiley, yep, there might be that one day when there's no meat in the butcher's shop, only a tomato or a pineapple. But through the COVID, the alcohol consumption skyrocketed, which might tell you otherwise about that actually happening. Well, there's not enough in the bar to be concerned about. So let's get down to the real numbers. We have to my knowledge, one person wrote a question to the city about consumption of bar. They were talking about whether it is got some governance issues around it. Or there's self-governance issue about it. I don't know any one council walking out of this chamber at 10 o'clock and going and drinking a bottle of scotch. There are councillors that walk out of this room, they'll be sitting here for 5 hours or 4.5 hours and walk into the bar and they have a beer and they have a talk amongst the council and they go home or they have a glass of wine. But today I received an email from a lady which is very familiar for writing letters to the city, and she said, thank you, Councillor Catalano, for bringing this item up. I detest the use of ratepayer funds for alcohol, full stop. It needs to stop. Well, that may be the opinion of one or two ratepayers, and I'll just bear the question whether those ratepayers or in fact anyone else in this room has written to our members of parliament, both state and federal, and asked them to shut their bars and close down their dining rooms because, by God, if you get an invitation to Parliament House, you're sitting there with a three-course meal and a glass of wine. But anyway, that's for another day. So what does it actually cost? 3,500 is the bit that's mooted in the council agenda, and regretfully the commentary of 3,500 isn't accurate, saying it's actually alcohol. That is for the entire consumption of that bar, for everything. Look around the room. All the bottled waters are sitting here. All of these things are sitting here. And somebody
30
said,
seconds left, Councillor.
Thank you. Somebody said the other day, Mr. Mayor, that we have these water bottles. Well, I can't drink the stuff out of that, full of the garbage that's in there. It's disgusting, tasteless, and I wouldn't drink it. So I'll get back to my last 15 seconds. The alcohol consumption, by analysis, is $18.75 a week. $18.75 a week for alcohol. And that's based on a number of 56 meetings, and that includes BFAC. BFAC meet here as well, and BFAC use the bar. There's no barcode. There's no walking and say, what did you drink? What did you drink? What have you got? What did you drink? There's no barcodes on the glass. There's no one over the bar hitting a till. So if we're talking about real things, it works out to be 0.0 of a cent per ratepayer. Per rateable property. It's actually half of that when you go down to ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor. That's your
I
move
an
extension
of 1 minute. No, I'm being timed. So anyway, that's the end of my debate. Thank you.
It did go over. Okay. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the debate. I realise this is going to be a heated one for the night, and yes, we've had history, and you know, it could go back to army service dinners, council dinners, and I do realise there's a traditional history behind this, and it's a hard one to debate. But we are receiving, I'm particularly receiving quite a lot of heat from Ellenbrook residents and ratepayers regarding consumption of alcohol. I understand it's a small amount, but in the overall scheme of things, it's the ratepayers who are emailing us in regard to the alcohol consumption. Might I suggest that we bring our own and lock it in a cupboard if this particular motion fails, and we put in an amendment that might be a consideration. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. Speaker for. Councillor Lucas.
I'll speak against the motion. From the debate from Councillor Catalano, people could easily get the impression that we're all alcoholics. She said it interferes with our mental debating skills. She did, Councillor Scanlon. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr Mayor.
She said
I'll
it
just
makes
say she
us
was
aggressive.
She said it was a general statement. It was
Well,
it was not
she did say
directed
that,
to anyone.
So, Councillor Lucas, if you carry on,
She
please.
said it makes us aggressive.
I didn't actually say it makes anyone in this room aggressive. I said it can make people aggressive. It has, because it makes people emotional.
The implication was there. So
no, it's just it is a general statement, and it's a fact.
Well, you made the
and
same,
it is a fact also.
Well, you made the same accusation of Councillor Congren's comment. So carry on, Councillor Lucas.
The implication was there that we must go and just chug down beers or wine or whiskey or whatever alcoholic drink that you prefer. As Councillor Congren pointed out, that total includes soft drink, sparkling water, still water. What if we were to stock the bar with 0 alcohol beer? Would that be? It's still going to be a cost, but there's no alcohol in it. We can get 0 alcohol wine. I think every person here has availed themselves to drinks at the bar at some time during their time on council. To me, I see it as a bit of an icebreaker. If councillors are getting here at 5 o'clock, if they would like to enjoy 1 beer or half a glass of wine with their evening meal, I have no issue with that. I think I might be perhaps one of the least users of the bar here. I don't stay behind after council meetings. I've got a home to go. But I do notice 8 or 10 councillors staying behind. They interact. It causes team building. To sit there, to relax after a meeting, discuss certain issues, and if they have a beer or a half a glass of wine, I've got no issue with that. I worked it out, it's $4 a week. Councillor Congren went down to like it's a fraction of a cent over the entire body. I think it has more benefits than disbenefits. It's just another thing that people can object to. They think we're getting a freebie. Well, I disagree with that. I see many benefits in having a social drink in a social atmosphere at certain times. And maybe you're right, Councillor Catalano, maybe it does break down some barriers and we can sit down and talk with each other in a social environment. So I can't support your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor,
everyone here knows that I'm not a wowser. But I'm going to support Councillor Catalano's motion. And I'm doing that because I think it's the issue really lies with public perception and what the ratepayers think. It's not a large amount of money, councillors, but I think the time has come to start paying for it ourselves. Councillors, I'm happy to either bring my own or for there to be a bar bill where councillors can just write down what they've drunk and it just gets totted up. We could elect a councillor as a sort of a bar bill officer, so it doesn't fall on the staff to do that. Or we can just pay $4 a week each, whatever it is. So, councillors, I do support the motion, but I think it's really on us to pay our own way. The other issue I want to address is this business of drinking before meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall I've ever drunk before a meeting because I'm very clear about the code of conduct and what it says in there. I regard council meetings as work. I do not drink before work, during work, and this is work, so I would not drink prior to a council meeting. I think that there are definitely benefits for drinking after council meetings, but we should pay for it ourselves. It's that simple. So I support the motion, but our supporters carry on drinking as long as we're paying for it ourselves.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? No. Councillor Catalano, I'll ask you to close. Sorry, Councillor McNamara. You're speaking for or against?
I'm speaking against. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, some time ago we had a motion. We have to have our meal before the meeting. And we were told by the CEO at the time, right, you have to have a meal before the meeting. Okay, we'll have a glass of wine as well. We will. So that was the start. Now that we have our meal before the meeting, that's over and done with. And like lots of other issues, Mr. Mayor, that satisfied one group of people. That group of people then decided, well, that's done. Let's push up the pencil a little further. We have no more alcohol. No more alcohol will be drunk in these premises. How dare you drink alcohol? I've heard it over and over and over again, Mr. Mayor. Not just in this chamber, but outside this chamber. Excuse me for saying this, but the do-gooders are getting on top. Eventually, the do-gooders are getting on top. Over and over and over again. Not a just issue. We can't call a blackboard anymore, we have to call it a chalkboard. We can't call it a black boy anymore, we can call it a weed...
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order, Mayor.
So basically, Mr.
Point of order, Mayor. Sorry, John. Councillor McNamara. Oh, I'm trying to get the Mayor's attention, Councillor Congerton, and I don't know how many times I have to say point of order.
Okay, all right. What's your point of order?
I would assume that do-gooders are doing good, so I don't see what the problem with do-gooders doing good would be.
That's exactly what I said.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do-gooders on occasions do good. I don't have a problem with that. So, but do-gooders in general are the loudest. Remember that, they're the loudest of the lot. And the people who object are generally the loudest. And when we hear our community and our ratepayers have told us, how many? We don't ever hear. We hear these motherhood statements that our ratepayers and our community have told us that you're doing wrong. How dare you have a half pint? How dare you have a quarter glass of beer? Or how dare you have a glass of wine? Where are the facts? Where are the actual... I saw millions of emails from about 8 or 9 different people. How many ratepayers in this particular organisation? 140,000 is the residents. So basically, Mr. Mayor, our ratepayers do not give a damn as long as they get a reasonable job done by us. They don't give a damn. We do have to do a good job on behalf of our ratepayers. We don't have to sit here every night and say, oh, this is going to cost 2 shillings. Oh, Lord above in heaven, I can't drink that. No, we'll put that to one side. Mr. Mayor, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zeno, you wish to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Looking forward to this.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, the City of Swan is renowned for its Swan Valley. The Swan Valley has basically put the City of Swan on the map, whether it be at a local, interstate or national level. What is the Swan Valley renowned for? It is renowned for its wine, boutique breweries, award-winning gins and ciders, along with its gourmet food. How much does this alcoholic beer, wine, gin, cider and food bring to the City of Swan? Okay, in the past couple of years, or in the past 12 months, because of COVID-19, tourism has slackened off because of the border closures. But prior to that, and in the future, once the borders reopen, we're talking, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars which gets spent here in the City of Swan from tourism. And I dare say the City of Swan should be doing its utmost to support the wineries, the breweries, the gin makers and the ciders and the food. And we should be basically stocking just Swan Valley wines and beers and beverages and promoting them to all our visitors from whether they're local, interstate or international, at functions like civic functions, because these people are generating hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in rate revenue and bringing millions of dollars to the City of Swan and to its ratepayers and its residents. And we should be supporting them. If anything, there should be a motion put that the City of Swan only stocks Swan Valley wines, because there's over 40 wineries in the Swan Valley. We should be stocking only Swan Valley breweries or beers, because we have, and don't quote me, but there's over 10 boutique breweries in the Swan Valley, and they're all award-winning, right? How many gin makers do we have? And these people have won numerous awards, not just at a local level, but an international level. And also now we have the cider. So when it comes to consuming alcohol, I've been on council for a long time. And I don't think that I have ever seen a councillor overindulging in alcoholic beverages, because especially in today's day and age, you can't afford to, especially if you're driving yourself to a council meeting and home again, because you can't run the risk of getting stopped and losing your licence. And nobody would want the embarrassment of being caught as a councillor, you know, and being done by DD.
30 seconds left.
So I dare say, councillors, I think we're all level-headed people, and if you do partake in a glass of wine or a beer, that is not overindulging, and I dare say that is responsible, and I think that we should be supporting it. And as I said, we should be supporting our local products.
Thank you, Councillor Zanino. Any speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Richards, you've already spoken. You can't.
Well,
You can't re-enter the debate. Councillor Scanlon.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak about the issue of governance. But before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge the words of Councillor Zanino, and that we should be supporting the Swan Valley and the Swan Valley wineries and others. And there's ways we can do that. We can do it in a way without drinking the alcohol here, because it is an extra. We get paid. We're paid our sitting fees. Yes, it's nice to all sit around and debrief and drink wine, but alcohol is a known substance that affects us. And even though it's after a meeting, I agree with Councillor Catalano that we shouldn't be drinking alcohol at council chambers. So it's interesting that society has changed, and I don't mind being labelled a do-gooder. That's okay, because that means doing good. That's fine. But as councillors, we do need to respect the community's perceptions, and, you know, in state government, employers have to fundraise for their own Christmas parties. I don't think we should make staff here fundraise for their own Christmas party, but, you know, we do. It is a benefit, and it's a tradition that's carried on from the time when we did not get paid so handsomely. And I believe in good governance, as in the officer's report, it says the City of Perth inquiry looked closely at the hospitality provided by the council, and it would be reasonable to categorise the discretionary provision of alcohol as an area of risk for any local government. And the city officers acknowledge the expenditure in the public sector as an area that often attracts the risk of perception of misconduct. So this is about perception. It's about perception in the community, and I have heard from the community about this, and I think it's time. I'm supporting Councillor Catalano's motion.
Thank you. Any further speakers for or against? Councillor Henderson speaking.
Against.
Against.
Mr.
Councillor.
Mayor, I wasn't going to speak, but there have been a few things said that I feel need to be covered. First things first, I want to make it absolutely clear that I certainly do not drink before a council meeting or a board meeting like Councillor Congadin. Although I think you'll find, if you look at the studies, a small amount of alcohol actually makes you a little bit sharper. So that's by the by. But the thing that I'm mostly concerned about this motion is that it's been put out as though we have our noses in the trough. It's been put out that we are abusing a facility. The community feedback on Facebook from some sectors has been scathing. But, you know, it's interesting to note when I speak to people around the place, around the traps, they don't have a problem whatsoever for the work that I put into this council for $30,000 a year, and I wouldn't call that handsome. They don't have a problem with me having a beer after a long meeting. They don't have a problem with the council providing a drink to the Bushfire Advisory Committee members who come and give their time as volunteers and work hard for the community. I think that we should be doing those things as part of our overall support of our community. But I'll make it clear that the community I talk to do not have a problem whatsoever with the small amount that Councillor Conklin has outlined to provide a drink perhaps after a meeting. Maybe the next thing is that we shouldn't provide a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. That should go as well because that costs money. Or maybe we shouldn't have a cheese platter with the meal. Maybe cut out dessert. Where do you run this mechanism, Mr. Mayor? Because frankly, it's a wedge mechanism that I don't like. I think the community don't like it. The community think that we should be given an opportunity to do our job and be appropriately able to have a drink at the end of a meeting. One email I saw said something along the lines of, if you're going to have a few drinks and you're going to get in your car and drive home, that's illegal. Well, I don't know a councillor in this room that would drink over and above the amount that they are allowed to drink and get in a car and drive home. It's just not the calibre of the people in this room. They wouldn't do it. So I don't believe that can be dealt with in that way. City of Perth was raised. City of Perth, we know, was abused and was a shocking example of where it could go. And this council has never been in that category. This council has been responsible. We don't have a massive bar bill. We don't have a massive restaurant bill, by the way, which is what City of Perth had. I think we have to look at some balance. What is it that is provided within the realm of a councillor's duties? And a few drinks after a meeting is pretty much insignificant. I know, maybe we should look at the other things that are part of councillors' duties, like maybe we should stop providing computers. That's part of your job. You get paid for it. You should buy your own, etc. It goes on and on, Mr. Mayor, and I think we need to draw a line on this one and get on with life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. On that, I think we've more than covered it. So, Councillor Catalano, I'll ask you to close the debate.
Thank you. Well, actually, this is just about alcohol. It's not about anything else. It's not about any other kind of things that we have to assist us with our work. And it's not about food, and it's about alcohol, simply and purely. Now, I just want to say we still have got some conflicting ideas in this chamber about whether alcohol should be drunk before meetings. But I was pleased to hear that it seems to be that just about everyone thinks it's not okay. And that's good, considering what I think that alcohol does do in terms of decision making. Now, I mean, you can call me a name and you can call me do-gooder if you want, but I mean, I do drink alcohol. I just don't think that this is the right place for it. That's what I'm saying. And I'm also saying that if you want to debrief, you use your own funds to provide alcohol to debrief and do your own little kind of team building exercises and all that. That's use your own resources for that, just like everybody else does. I haven't got a problem with people drinking alcohol. It's just that not at a workplace and not at the ratepayer's expense. And it might be a small amount of money, but it is the principle of the thing. And yes, I do take Councillor Zanino's point about Swan Valley alcohol and the production of it, but I think we're not going to be supplying. It's not about promoting Swan Valley alcohol by stocking the bar here with Swan Valley alcohol. I mean, there's no question that alcohol will be provided at functions. And yes, I do agree, Swan Valley alcohol and all of its different variations should be provided there. I'm talking about this bar here in this council premises, this place of work. And we don't need to be, I don't see how we're going to promote Swan Valley alcohol production in this place of work. So not quite accurate to my argument. And I did object to statements like people who object are the loudest and people who don't give a damn. People didn't say anything, so they don't give a damn. Do you know what? I mean, for a start, people who are allowed to object to, work premises being used to consume alcohol. I mean, it is not a standard practice across the board. This is an exception. It's an old-fashioned entitlement that's been carried over, and there are no workplaces where alcohol is I don't believe, provided. Well, not standard, and it's certainly not an expectation in the community that you go and get a job and that your employer is going to provide you alcohol in the fridge for you to wind down after your day's work.
Thank you, Councillor. That's your 3
Thank you.
minutes. Put the vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? The rest? Lost 11-4. Councillors, we do have to deal with a confidential item this evening, so I'd like a motion to go behind closed doors so we can deal with that. Moved Councillor Congleton, seconded Councillor Parry. There's no one against. We'll declare that carried away now behind closed doors. Megan, if you turn off the transmission. We put in play when you were the mayor that we would adjourn meetings at 10 o'clock. Yes. Don't need a motion, that's it.